looking at you, kid.
I'm Charles Foster Kane!
Hey, Stella!
Suck on this.
What is going on, everybody? James Hancock here. A couple days, can't even speak. A couple days ago, a new trailer for Dune Part 3 dropped right into our laps, and it is officially time to start talking about the novel Dune Messiah, which I recently reread, and that's obviously the novel upon which the movie is based. But joining me for this endeavor is my fellow Dune enthusiast, Bill Scurry. Not to worry, if you've not yet read the book, we're going to start the video with a broad general overview of our expectations and give you plenty of warning before unpacking any secrets from the novel in the second half of our video. But let's not waste any time. Mr. Scurry, welcome back to the channel. How the hell are you? And what have you been up to that you'd like to share on some other podcasts or filmmaking endeavors or whatever the case might be?
Let's see. I have. I'm good. What have I been doing? Been on other people's podcasts. I was on Film 89 recently a few times. Our good friends over in Cardiff, Wales. We talked about aliens. They do the big number. I think they realize that you get some traffic with the big number anniversaries. So we did Star Trek 4 a couple of months ago. We did Aliens, which came out the same summer too. Talk about synchronicity. And I cast myself in both those episodes of saying that year, 86 was enormous. It was really formative for being a nerd fan.
Wasn't that also Transformers, the movie as well?
Oh shit, yeah, it was. That's what I'm saying. We ate good that summer. It was a big deal. I mean, talk about that. That was, I mean, we had our tastes divined by that point already. But I mean, the same summer had The Voyage Home, Transformers the movie, and Aliens the same goddamn summer. I mean, it was gold, 84, 85, 86, 87, so on and so forth. Just like in particular, that's where like the hand of God touched down on the Fujita scale. You know, you just talk about things that have followed me my entire life.
Before discovering girls. In the fall of 86, I discovered skateboarding and girls at the same time. And suddenly I was like, G.I. Joe, Transformers, Masters of the Universe. This is lame. Girls and skateboarding and pop music and that sort of thing. So I had a minor evolution. But then the following year, the Nintendo came out. At least that's when I got mine. So I reverted back to my nerd status. And of course, in 86, I was reading like the fall. Actually, no, it wouldn't have been Fall of the Mutants. It would have been Mutant Massacre. I was still reading a lot of Marvel comics, but I was trying to kind of hide my nerddom a little bit more than I had between like kindergarten and third grade.
Yeah, look, I didn't get into women until the 2020s, so I had a lot of time to start
still working on it.
Reading comics, yeah, I'm trying to blow the doors open like that scene in A Risky Business when Tom Cruise starts making it with Rebecca De Mornay. It took me a long time to get to that skill, but I'm getting there. Yeah. Every
time we see a naked woman, double doors should blow open and leaves should start swirling around. It should be an epic experience. Well, let's just dive right in. Dune Messiah is a book you and I both read a long time ago, and we both reread it in preparation for this video. This is probably not going to be the last time we discuss Dune Messiah and Dune Part 3 between now and December. But we did get a new trailer a couple days ago, and I guess the best place to start would be Denis Villeneuve is taking some liberties with the material, which are both exciting but also possibly concerning. But just where would you like? Maybe the best place to start is for people who have not read the book and don't want any spoilers. What is the setting? Where does the story begin? What is the jumping off point for Dune Part 3? Just so people kind of know what is the context for all these crazy images that we've been getting bombarded with over the last couple days.
Well, I think it takes place, 16 years after, 10 years? I always forget the time jump.
I think the novel's 12 years later, but I think the movie's like 16 years later. But I might have those numbers a little bit off, but there is a time jump.
You get the point. Yeah, there's either a decade or about a decade and a half time jump after the events of Dune. And Dune itself took place, I think, over 3 years because Paul Atreides goes from being an adolescent to sort of a young adult or a young boy in it too. So it's really the empire, the sort of new imperium. It's still the Carino, the Carino throne, the lion throne of Padishah, the Padishah Emperor Shaddam Carino gives it to Paul Atreides. So it's this continuance of the same regency, and Paul Atreides is married to the royal princess Irulan, and his concubine is Chani. His real love is Chani, and they live inside Arrakeen. And the difference is that Arrakeen is built up into this gigantic combination of like Mecca and Vatican City. It's both a combination of a political headquarters and the throne, the religious seat of order in this entire imperium. And what's happening is that the Fremen, this restive bunch of men and women who all live inside the rocks of Arrakis have gone off world. What they're using is the fleets of the Spacing Guild and their own Atreides army. What they're doing is they're waging a jihad across the galaxy, knocking over planets one by one if they don't accord to their sort of godlike rule.
Part 2, where he's like, "Listen, Al Gaib." He's like, that big goofy grin on his face, very excited to go on a little jihad.
Yeah, and the flashbacks in the movie and all this hesitation that Chani was talking about in the second film rather, but the first of the two, is her saying something like, what will happen if you activate these people, these religious fundamentalists in the South, of which Stilgar was one of them. It's like, you're going to start a fire. And he sees it in his premonitions. He knows that if he's going to beat
Gurney. I think he says it's a Gurney where he says, like, he's seen a vision of the future and he dreads what's to come. And he's like, what, if you lose control? And he says, no, if I gain it. So even Paul knows that if he gains control, potentially 61 billion people might die, which is where we stand at the beginning of the story. 61 billion dead around the universe. And Paul's wrestling with this idea where he wants the jihad to end. He wants his godhead to end. But he also knows that if he were to die suddenly, he would just be a martyr. And the jihad might get even worse and continue in his name, even in his absence. So he's like, what the hell do I do? He knows that he basically says at one point, it's going to take 100 generations for the universe to recover from my reign. And it's a very dark setting in which the story begins to unfold, which leads to the conspirators.
The conspirators, that's great. Yeah, and so I assume the conspiracy, the Kabbalah people, it's going to be the same as it is in the book. And again, this is not a spoiler. But the conspirators are sort of half who you think they were and half new characters. So it's Reverend Mother Gaius Helen Moham, who's played by Charlotte Gainsbourg. Charlotte Rampling.
No, yeah.
Charlotte Rampling. Sorry, different Charlotte.
Gainsbourg's yet another European icon.
Yeah, exactly. I screwed myself up here. Irulan, who's played by Florence Pugh. And then you have two new characters. You have a guild navigator who we haven't seen hide or hair of yet. And it's famously... We know the Guild Navigators from David Lynch's movie where he imagined them looking like these sort of weird phallic shapes with acne scarred weird thing.
With a big sphincter mouth with mist coming out.
a vagina mouth. Yeah, exactly. Spewing out orange smoke. And there's a character who's just plainly named Edric the Navigator, who of course is your namesake in this case, and we have no idea what he will look like. But it's like people have been waiting.
Yeah, here's one artist rendering. I think I'm blanking on the name of this. Mark Simonetti's right there in the drawing, but that's one rendering of the Guild Navigator.
Yeah, and I mean, if you remember what it looked like from the Lynch version, the long story short is it's kind of like a weird half fish man who's addicted to spice and sits inside of a tank of some sort, impelled by anti-gravity. He no longer has legs that work. It's almost like fins. The legs and the arms turn to fins, and he's a smooth fish-like persona now.
And people suspect this is that character in the movie. When I first saw this, I was like, oh, is this going to be how... hate is introduced, but now I'm realizing there's most likely going to be a Guild Navigator because you can see the orange kind of mist inside that like floating sarcophagus.
It could be that could be hate, for all we know. I don't leave it to. I wouldn't put it past Warner's marketing and Denis Villeneuve to sort of confuse us a little bit on what we think will be what.
This video is all about speculation as opposed to absolute certainty.
But for the trailers, they come up with, like, if you look at the frickin' last Spider-Man trailer, like, there's all sorts of, when you watch these people going into battle, Spider-Man's flipping out against the hand, and it's like, goddamn well there are figures that haven't been rendered for the trailer. They're concealing who's in those fights, or they'll, cut and paste different guys. The whole point
Hulk,
is to
Punisher, or whomever. Somebody's going to also, it's going to be a team.
Correct. Exactly. So, Edric the Navigator is one of the... And Edric the Navigator, whether you know this or not, I mean, again, it's not a spoiler, but the Guild Navigators, much like Paul, have the gift of premonition. They can see the future. They can see the pathways of the future. That's very important for this. And I have a feeling that's going to be an element. A narrative element is that the fact is having a Guild Navigator as one of the conspirators is sort of a condition of the conspiracy because the Guild Navigator essentially covers them by being there. He eliminates
total suicide otherwise.
Yeah, he smudges the ability of Paul Atreides to see the conspiracy by having another sort of truth-sayer there. And then the final member is this new character played by Robert Pattinson.
Well, you didn't mention one of the key conspirators, this lady.
Oh, I said Irulan. Irulan.
Yeah, you said Irulan. Sorry. Yeah. So her
okay.
and Mohim and Edric, and obviously and then once again the final member.
And this is where we were talking about beforehand, because there has been speculation for decades, and this book came out what year?
Like 68 or so.
68. Yeah, you had a lot of people for a lot of years wondering, like Frank Herbert had his own glossary that was actually
69 is when the book 69, dude.
Some words were explained of how to pronounce them, and some of them are sort of like have Arabic interpretations or sort of Arabic meanings, and some of them are just words that he came up with.
And also when you're a kid or an adult or whatever, if you're reading fantasy or science fiction and you kind of hear a name in your head or you recognize the name for years, it's a kind of a strange thing to suddenly have to say it out loud when you're talking to your fellow fans after all these years. So it's spelled Scytale, and there are two popular pronunciations. Which ones do you prefer?
I like Scytale. My favorite is Scytale. Don't know if it's correct, but that's what I go with.
Yeah, some have said it can be a little bit like rhyming with Italy, like skittily, which I don't like at all. And some people say it's like Scytale, like skytail, but it's a cool looking word. I'm just not entirely convinced I know how to say it. It's like the word Cthulhu. Everybody says Cthulhu, but it's more like Cthulhu, like almost like like you're vomiting or something like that. But it's just one of many words, or one of many new additions to the glossary that people are going to have to debate and discuss. What about his organization when it comes to the Bene? Do you say Tleilax or Tlilax or Tlilaxu, or what do you say? I know that the planet is Tleilax, but the Bene Tlilaxu, or he is a Tlilaxu. What do you go with?
Yeah, I go as Bene Tlilax, and the species is, or the race, or the, I guess, political organ. They're all humans. So that's another thing too. They're the Tlilaxu is what I call them.
It's a new discipline called the face dancers. And I love, one of the things you and I've talked about a million times in the past, how one of the things that makes Dune so cool is whether you're a blade master or a mentat or a Bene Gesserit or a Fremen or a face dancer, there are all these different paths that you can go down in order to enhance yourself and gain additional abilities. And Robert Pattinson, I think there's a very real chance, if they nail the character, that he could very easily steal the show, because it's new, it's a fresh face, it's new blood, and so and also he's just a diabolical fucking villain, and I think he's got all the gear to deliver and make this character like one to remember.
Yeah, and the way he's portrayed in the book is really interesting, because again, he's a face dancer, which literally means that their discipline is that they can actually reshape their flesh, almost like they can change their height. They're still made of flesh and bone, but they can just reshape it at will to mimic other people, mimic the voice. And they're almost like absolutely uncanny mimics too. It's very difficult to see. During the course of the book, there's only a few times where Scytale, if you stay with me, I'm going to keep calling that through the whole thing.
I just call him Pattinson.
Call him Pattinson. He's imitating somebody else, and a character who should not know he's Scytale does know he's Scytale. I think it's Paul. Again, it's not really a spoiler again, but it's like there are moments where Scytale is taking a risk by being impersonating somebody else. He can get away with it most times because that's how good they are, the entire race. It is worth mentioning that the Bene Tlilaxus are geneticists. They're master sculptors of flesh. That's their particular discipline, is that whereas on Ix, Ix and Riches, according to the book, and it was even mentioned in the first movie, Ix and Riches are where the machines are made, complex machines that are just run by humans. Again, there's no artificial intelligence. That's the whole point of the Butlerian Jihad, which is the backstory to all of this. So you have the Ixians, are these master roboticists, these master mechanics create the technology of the world. Then there's this, like you said, the Sook school is where the doctors come to. That's where they get the imperial conditioning, and that's what played into the first part of the movie, where the mentat was able to, like Dr. Yui was fucked up.
Yui. Sorry, not
Chop Suey. Yeah, but the mentats, they are human computers essentially. And again, everyone takes spice. That's the other thing, is that everybody takes spice. It's sort of like absolutely essential for the stretching of the human ability. They're all junkies. They're all addicted. They're also extremely long-lived too, because spice could extend your life out to about 150 years, I think. So yeah, the idea of what we're seeing is he's the only one that's in this movie. And again, one is diabolical and powerful enough as a conspirator to sort of like stand in for 100. I think the casting of Pattinson's a really good wild card, because if anybody's proven that they could be a very enigmatic, weird son of a bitch character, this guy's got a pretty good rip lately, I think.
Well, speaking of being weird, before we get into our premonitions about this movie, let's talk a little bit about the movie that might have been, because this is not the first attempt at adapting Dune Messiah. And actually, you know, as a TV show, Dune Messiah and Children of Dune were adapted into the second season of that show. And I have not rewatched season 2 in a long time. But way back in the 1980s, David Lynch was taking a crack at Dune Messiah before his first movie underperformed, to put it mildly. And you know, obviously we don't want to relitigate all the problems with the final cut of that movie, but there was a draft of at least like the first half of Dune Messiah. And I was reading a passage earlier today, and I just want to give us a taste of what might have been with this character had David Lynch had a chance to fully bring it to life. Do you want to read this paragraph, or do you want me to read it, or who gets?
I'll do my best, Moose Madsen, and I'll exercise my my voiceover skill in this one. Okay.
Fantastic.
Again, I'll pronounce it the way I pronounce it. Saital's friends are laughing and wildly rolling marbles under their hands as they watch Saital sing through 18 mouths and 18 heads strung together with a flesh that is like a flabby hose. The heads are singing all over the pink room. One man opens his mouth and a swarm of tiny people stream out, singing accompaniment to Saital. Another man releases a floating dog, which explodes midair, causing everyone to get small and lost in the fibers of the beautiful carpet. Though small, they all continue to laugh, a laughter which is now extremely high in pitch. Saital, now only with one head, crawls up a wall, laughing hysterically.
I mean, that is not in the novel. And so if at any point over the course of this conversation, if I act critical about Denis Villeneuve taking liberties with the text, David Lynch, who's one of my all-time favorite filmmakers, was also going to take liberties with the text. And I can, usually I'm very hard-nosed about taking liberties. But with Dune Messiah, when you think about all the qualities that people are craving or hoping for after the first two movies, the first book is such like an epic tale of revenge that's so thrilling and so exhilarating. I understand the need for a Denis Villeneuve to introduce a little more spectacle, because in the novel, we hear about the jihad and we hear about the death toll, but we don't see large-scale battles. We don't see ships colliding in space. We don't see planets being overrun. And my understanding is that the beginning of the movie is almost like Saving Private Ryan, with these crazy battles that we're going to see. And I'm open to whatever Denis Villeneuve wants to throw away. I think there are other areas where he might get into slippery terrain with some of the liberties he might take. But I think whatever liberties he takes, they're going to pale in comparison to the liberties that David Lynch might have taken with the same material, if this paragraph is any indication of what he might have done with the material.
Yeah, but keep in mind that this is a fragment. I think the backstory on this was that there was a book that came out, I guess it was 4 years ago, called An Oral History. I could get that wrong. An Oral History of Dune. It was about the 1984 movie. It's written by this guy named Max Every. It's actually a really good book, and he's more of a compiler. He did 1 billion interviews, and he presents just about everybody who's still extant who worked on Dune 84 with Lynch, and even got Lynch to talk about one of the last interviews he did, one of the only ones he ever did about his own movie, because he just shied away from talking about it. It's a fantastic book. It's the size of a brick. It's really good. If you like Dune, if you hate the movie, I'm saying it's worth reading. Anyway, he was given access to Lynch's papers posthumously. I guess his widow allowed him to run through his office. They needed help essentially going through a lot of his stuff because they were going to donate it to, I forget which museum. And Every found a draft that was on yellow paper that was sticky noted. It was just gone to antiquity, lost to anyone's knowledge. It was a piece of the script that David Lynch started writing before Dune came out in Flute. And so he had this piece, and it's like a direction of where he would have gone to it. I mean, it's only about 60 pages of the script, maybe even if that, maybe 50 pages. But Every hung on it, and he made a talk show. It was like podcast and talk show circuit in 2024 talking about it. So far as I know, no one's actually seen the script but him. I don't even know if it's in his hands anymore. I think it's still in the Lynch family estate. But at least Every came back with confirmation that Lynch had a plan of what he was going to do. And, I was really reassured. I mean, I just remember listening. I was biking around, listening to Every talk about it. And he described, again, he was doing readings like I just did of these pieces. And to think about, oh my God, we would have gotten the planet Bene Tlilax, which is not featured in the book at all. There were elements where the cameras was sweeping over, and it would have been done in 1984 miniatures and bigatures and practical photography, with the entire planet's surface covered in these canals that are filled with goo, effluent, human fetuses by the millions. It was the byproduct of genetic engineering that went wrong. It's like you would have been shown just how mad they were as geneticists because they just used human flesh like it was a abattoir,
like it's Play-Doh, and they're throwing out the scraps.
Everything about it seemed extremely wet and disgusting and plastic and gelatinous and oozing. And I just thought, it's like the stuff that worked so good about 84 Dune from Lynch was the fact that he made it wet and curly-Q, rococo strangeness.
Very tactile.
It was over budget, and it was a runaway train, and Dino De Laurentiis hated spending every dime he had to on it. However, it's like David Lynch added things like the pustules on the fucking Baron as he's running around in that weird suit, and the place is disgusting, and there are heart plugs and all this weird stuff that was supposed to be there. And before we go any further, I will just say
like the little cat that Thufir Hawat has to keep alive.
You just milk the cat. I've said this on other podcasts, is that if the only complaint I have, and it's not even a solid complaint, it's just the one note I have about Villeneuve's movies, is that they're gray, dry, austere. And Villeneuve does not go for wet. Villeneuve does not go for gross. He does a little bit of body horror every now and then, but it's like, I think that he
goes for grand and majestic with images like this. Like that's what Villeneuve does really, really well.
That looks like Munich 1936, like that's the whole point, is it's supposed to look like that. He stages these things very well. I mean, that's granite, that's like granite capitals and Doric columns and standards and flags and ranks of people goose-stepping with each other. That stuff is, Reddit Alini Riefenstahl. It's fantastic. And Lynch, would have done not that. He would have done something very different. And this is what the Jihad should look like. On the other hand, and it's like this little tease of what Bene Tlilax could have looked like is unlike anything we would have seen. And granted, it would have really put this movie in the 1980s. One part Eraserhead, one part Elephant Man, but maybe more close to David Lynch's own dreams than what the Dune he was able to make, I think, was a success. But Dune Messiah would have been even closer, I think, if it had been given the leash to make it.
Yeah, in my imagination, if like there's an alternate reality that I could will into being, I would just love to see what he would do with Leto II and the God Emperor of Dune. He would have basically had to devote an entire decade of his life just to get to that point, which would have deprived us of things like Blue Velvet and Wild at Heart and Twin Peaks. And so I'm glad we got Blue Velvet and Wild at Heart and Twin Peaks and all that stuff. But seeing what he might have done with Leto II and God Emperor of Dune, it would have been gross. It would have been interesting. And I just hope that at some point, without offering any spoiler of any kind, I hope that at least Denis Villeneuve will offer us, through a vision of prescience, will at least give us like a snapshot, like a blinking you'll miss it moment where perhaps Paul might see what is to come. Because in the book, he does mention to Chani a few times, our empire right now is going to pale in comparison to what's to come from our offspring, where what they build, like, our empire is going to just seem like a little afterthought by comparison, because Leto II achieves almost limitless power. But let's get back to broad strokes about Dune Part 3. And once again, we got to be very careful about the character of Hate, aka I won't even say his true name, but there's Jason Momoa. We all know he's coming. He's in the trailer. He looks badass. There we get to see him double. You and I took that image. Like, that's a cool one. What excites you about the return of Jason Momoa, and what can you tease without getting too specific?
Well, he's returned. I don't think it's not. It comes really quickly. I don't think it's a big deal if we sort of give the nature of his appearance, because it happens very soon at the beginning of the book. It's discussed almost instantly, and he enters the book quickly, and he himself makes bones with Paul Atreides about the nature of his return. And that's kind of the puzzle. There's a little bit of a riddle and a trap, the fact that he reappears. So it's like, that he's dead because he was killed by the Harkonnen the Sardaukar in Harkonnen livery in the first movie. His death allows Paul to escape to the desert with his mother, essentially. So this guy is dead, and yet he's back in our third movie here.
Yeah.
And
delivered as a gift to Paul for some reason.
See, that's it. He's taking me to Paul. And if I could tell you that the fact that we keep talking about the masters of flesh, the mad geneticists from Benny Tlilax, have something to do with this movie, and that you have a dead man returned, I think you can make the causal connection between the two of those things. Yeah, so his as Jamie says, his name is Hayt, Hayt, and it is, as you see, this is Jason Momoa playing the character of Duncan Idaho from the very first, from Dune, part 1 of 1, whatever you want to call it.
We will fight like demons. Yeah, I mean, my preferred version of Duncan Idaho is what we saw in the 1984 film. I just think that's a more, in my mind, because I saw that movie a billion times before I even read the book, and long before I ever saw Dune Part 1. In my mind, that's just how Duncan Idaho will always be. But yeah, I do think Jason Momoa is likable as the character, and he's great, you know, in action if and when he decides to cut a few lbs for his roles. He does look good on film when he's in action and battling Paul, and that's obviously a scene that we do not get in the book, like Paul and Duncan Idaho or Hayt throwing down. But I think this is going to be potentially the most exciting part. And when it comes to, like, is he a gift? Is he a weapon? Is he ultimately going to be on their side? Is he ultimately going to be like the engineer of the destruction? There's so many unknowns with this character about what it's going to do to Paul having one of his role models introduced back into his life. Because as we see in the first book, when Paul's growing up, he's surrounded by incredible role models, whether it's Dr. Yui or Gurney Halleck or Duncan Idaho or Thufir Hawat. He has so many incredible role models that are going to, or even his mother, giving him the Bene Gesserit training, shaping him into this being that he's going to become. But now he's been emperor for quite some time, and suddenly one of his heroes is reintroduced back into his life. It's going to change him. It's going to fuck with him. It's going to take him into a strange emotional place where perhaps he won't be as confident as this guy we see right here, where he's leading a jihad across the universe that's responsible for the death of 61 billion people.
Yeah, this guy fucks. Yeah, you young pup. Exactly. Having Duncan Idaho back is, you know, he's explicitly one of his surrogate fathers, and the particular way in which Duncan
and represents the best that the Atreides have to offer.
Yeah, he was called that, and like we're not for a future we're not going to see. I could sort of tip our hand and say that through unconnected means, Duncan Idaho recurs in every book thereon in the rest of the saga. Frank Herbert.
I never got to book 5. Is he in book 5 as well?
He's in every book. Yes, he's in Chapter House and Heretics. He appears in both of those too, and that's kind of the point, is that he has this lasting permanence. You know, it's weird. You mentioned, you know, the idea is like he looks good in the part, and there's something about him when he slims down, drops a few lbs, gets his hair. You know, he's a strange actor. I like him a lot. He's really affable. I didn't see Supergirl, and I don't know how he does his Lobo. That's like
he just plays
really
himself.
Obvious,
like,
yeah, it's really obvious.
It's like you're not that different from Aquaman, which is pretty fresh in our memories, but it's like, you know, Jason Momoa, maybe, I mean, I love him as Khal Drogo, and I love him as Aquaman. I love him in different roles, but he doesn't have a ton of range. But it's like what you see in Minecraft and what you see in Supergirl, they're not that different.
Yeah, that's in this role. I mean, this is a big spot for him. This is like, you know, when Bautista was sort of coming out and showing the range he had working for Villeneuve and other movies. Momoa was a guy. Yeah, I too. You know, the way he's described in the book, his particular. His school is the Ginaz sword masters. Like, they're just plainly masters of edged weapons. You know, you went through the idea of where these characters come from. It's a lot like role-playing games, the Dungeons and Dragons, with the classes.
You pick your class. Are you a cleric? Are you a druid? What are you?
Yeah, there's something that easy to understand. So he was a sword master. He's described in the book as being sort of lithe. He's got curly black hair, sort of olive skin. I think he's supposed to look Greek a little bit.
And he's a womanizer. He's a babe slayer.
He is. He's a stick man, as they say in the old tongue. So yeah, the thing is, Momoa
which will have relevance without spoiling anything. Which will have relevance.
Oh yes, good point. Yes, it will. This comes into it. Yes, he's impossible for women to, especially when they're of age. Let's say he's impossible for women.
He's got an animal magnetism.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's like he's going to wind up. He's a riddle. He's an enigma. He's a puzzle. He's a dead man. He's back to life. I'm really excited to see how this winds up being for Villeneuve. I'm sure this is going to inform the sort of center narrative of the movie. I think he's going to have a lot of fun with it. The interplay between Chalamet and Momoa.
And there's a chance through this character that Villeneuve might have a chance to redeem one of the gaping flaws of the first Dune movie, where my greatest source of irritation was that he just seemed utterly uninterested and what the Mentats are capable of, their training, and how that impacts Paul's abilities, and how it gives like a mathematical precision to his prescience.
Yes.
When the Tleilaxu, if I'm saying that at all correctly, when they're creating their Golas, they do have the option of enhancing their abilities. Like they can create a medic that is also a killer that can break through their own training and conditioning to preserve life, or they can create Mentats that are also assassins and that sort of thing. And they have, let's just say, beefed up Duncan Idaho's already considerable abilities. And that gives Denis Villeneuve a chance to make things right. There are two big things that I want to see him make right with this movie. I don't know if you will or not. I want to see him make things right with the Mentats, and I want to see him make things right with Ali of the Knife, because my greatest source of frustration with the first two Dune movies, I thought he totally screwed up the interpretation of the character, how she was presented, how she was used in the plot. The person she would end up killing in the book, she kills the fucking Baron. It's not Paul. And like she has a vital role to play. And in this story, she's a major character in Dune Messiah. And Anya Taylor-Joy has a big assignment in front of her. And I just really hope they'll stick the landing with her character, because if they fuck her up again, that'll be the most enduring black mark against Denis Villeneuve, where he had this opportunity to, what do they call her, like the harlot priestess, this opportunity to create this truly bonkers character. I just hope they nail her, because there's some shots of her in the trailer which seem to have potential. But once again, this for me is the most difficult creative assignment of this movie, is really nailing her character.
Yeah, well, there's far less collateral of her so far, because the shots are either extremely far away, like in the throne room shot. I'm sure we'll click to it in a couple of.
There she is in the background. You see her.
That's her,
way back
exactly.
in the throne. Yeah.
She's sort of like a virgin priestess in the back, and she's in diaphanous white robes. And the only close-up shot, I think, is the other one. The bloody shot is the only other shot we've seen of her. And
I think that's her as well, way off in the background in the throne room. And I should say that throne room is tiny in comparison to how it's described in the book, where it's in the book, it's miles upon miles of corridors where you can fit like entire cities. Hang on, I've got a note where when, you know what, I'll save it for spoilers, but at one point, one of the conspirators is brought before Paul, and she just in awe, seeing just the level, the grandeur and the scale. And it's just like Frank Herbert just goes on for page after page after page describing this throne room. So let's just say, well, this is very impressive on the screen. It's a drop in the bucket compared to how it's described in the book.
Yeah, and that's the point of the Brutalist architecture, is that it's supposed to squash the observer. He crushed him under the boot heel of the godhead of the emperor, even if he's just a man. You're supposed to be cowed by the giant edifice around him. Again, that's all the references to Vatican City and Mecca, and all these things are absolutely in kind with one another. If it was also mixed with Albert Speer's version of Berlin that Hitler had sort of cooked up on top of that too. But I think that he was in a no-win situation. I'm not sure I saw an easy way in to get Alia at the age she needed to be, with the things she needed to do. Having said that, David Lynch, I totally bought
he both
her being.
I mean, I like to make fun of the line, "How can this be?" Like, but I love the character in the David Lynch film, even if it is ridiculous, having he's coming with many Fremen warriors and all that stuff. I mean, it is you're inviting ridicule, but it's also, I feel like you have to embrace the weirdness. Frank Herbert's creation is so strange and so otherworldly. You cannot play it safe. You got to take massive swings, and sometimes you're going to miss the ball and come around and hit yourself in the head with the bat. But every once in a while, you'll hear that sound of the ball going right out of the park. And I feel like you got to embrace the strange if you're going to adapt the books of Frank Herbert.
Well, look, I think that there was a character that was in the third and fourth Twilight movies, maybe the third, fourth, and fifth Twilight movies. There was a baby character who was very much Alia inspired, called Renesmee, and it wound up being a disaster. It was a character that was like, I don't know if it was a human or if it was a maquette that had a face. A face was built Uncanny Valley on top of it, but it was supposed to be like a 3-year-old that had an adult's personality to it. Complete utter fucking disaster. It became a joke and a punchline all over the internet when that movie came out. And I know that they were looking forward to like maybe not doing that or putting a kid. Yeah, I do agree. You got to take a big swing. It's like he's also smart enough that his big swing is going to be credible. He doesn't have like joke movie built into him. The guy takes like real serious care making his films. I have to assume that
like any reverend mother, you don't need to be powerful to prick somebody on the neck and poison them and kill them. Like we see it repeatedly in the movies. In the movie, it's a little needle. In the original David Lynch film, it's like a little like a little finger prick. But Alia, even if you're a 4 or 5 year old child, you can still scrape the Baron with your finger and do him in.
So the thing that I think of is that, you know, she's played by Anya Taylor-Joy, who had one sequence. She was sort of speaking through time to Paul through prescience in the second, in Dune Part 2, and that was as much as you got of Alia. So the thing is
and
that
Rebecca Ferguson tells him occasionally, "Oh, she's upset with you," or she's curious. Like she kind of is like translating on her behalf.
Yeah, but she's natal at that point. She's still inside the womb. In this one, she's supposed to be maybe at 16, 17 years old. She's kind of on the cusp. She's turned into a woman, but only just recently, and that's kind of, I don't know, for the narrative.
And Paul knows that with age potentially comes wickedness, but they describe her as the ultimate virgin. This is not a spoiler. I'm just gonna. There's a chapter which begins with the description of her character. No, that's the wrong page. Hang on, bear with me. That's her training with the blade. Yeah. Maybe it's yeah, here it is. This is a great little passage, which is on page 109. Doesn't have a chapter number, but it says the Fremen see her as the earth figure, a demigoddess whose special charge is to protect the tribes through her powers of violence. She is Reverend Mother to their Reverend Mothers. To pilgrims who seek her out with demands that she restore virility or make the Baron fruitful, she is a form of anti-mentat. She feeds on that proof that she feeds on that proof that the analytics has limits. She represents ultimate tension. She is the virgin harlot, witty, vulgar, cruel, as destructive in her whims as a Coriolis storm. Like, wow, all right. Like set me up on a date with her. She sounds fucking awesome. And so it's like she has so many interesting contradictions where she's young and millennia old at the same time. She's a harlot, but also completely inexperienced in the world of sex. She's incredibly violent, but also like this holy priestess. She does all these warring impulses. It is the juiciest, beefiest role by far in the novel, and it gives her a lot of room to kind of go nuts. And then once again, I just hope that Denis Villeneuve has taken every great scene from the book and just done everything in his power to try to include them in the film.
Yeah, there's a lot of them too. I mean, like you said, she plays what's going to happen to her in Children. I don't know if there's enough room to set that up too, because that's a big part of her character.
They might tease it.
They could, and it's like how that would particularly work too. Just simply because all the characters it would involve reprising would be really interesting. But this is probably already overstuffed as it is. You really can't go that.
But they could maybe foresee it as like a possible outcome, as like something they might want to try to avoid, or whatever the case might be. But before we get into our spoiler section, there's one last big area. Once again, totally spoiler free, no details. But the area where I think the movie has the potential to thrive, but also the potential to trip over its own feet and hang itself, is with the changes to Chani. And as you can see from the trailer, and as you can see from Dune Part 2, they are not only beefing up the character, but perhaps changing some of her motivations and some of her alliances and what her ultimate goals might be. And also in the trailer, a lot of these scenes could be pump fakes, because you never know if a scene might be a potential outcome that somebody's looking forward to, or maybe a flashback they're thinking back on. But right now, at least as far as the poster is concerned, they appear to at least be trying to condition us to the idea that the movie is going to be an adversarial relationship between Paul and Chani, which does not reflect the tone of the book whatsoever. And there are a lot of scenes in the trailer like, all right, well, is she the main adversary, or is Robert Pattinson the main adversary? But without divulging what happens during the book and what her ultimate fate is, to what degree do you think Denis Villeneuve is potentially giving himself a lot of rope to hang himself with by making a lot of changes to this really crucial character to the story?
Well, the very last scene of Dune Part 2 involved this rift, the sort of schism between Chani and Paul, was based on the fact that she saw that he was falling into the gap of his prediction or his premonition, and she saw only bad things coming of it, just the violence and whatnot. And she was furious that he knew better than to do what he was doing. And so she sort of took off to the desert, was riding a worm out. Now he's setting himself up for, like, you're entering this movie. However much time is passed between the ending of Dune 2 And like what happens off camera? Are they still at loggerheads? Because there's something something happens in this book that's very important, and it happens right at the end of the book, and you need them to be sort of on the same page for it to happen. We'll get to that.
And halfway along the way, without saying who or what, she does already have a natural adversary in the story as written. And I'm like, all right, well, if you're making Paul her adversary, are you going to deprive her natural adversary of like the dramatic weight that is already a part of the story as written by Frank Herbert?
Yeah, I think that that would be some great scenes. I mean, again, who you're talking about, it would be a great. I mean, both of the actors, I think, are ready to go at each other and to show something that they haven't done so far between the 3 movies. That this is the third of 3 movies that they've all been in together. It's a scene you haven't seen, and I think it's setting up. I have a feeling that Villeneuve is going to put some, like you said, pump fakes in terms of premonition, because also, what's his name? Who was I think. Jamis is also in this movie too. He keeps reappearing through visions, and that was the Fremen that Paul Atreides killed in combat in the middle of Dune 1. And it's like he keeps showing up inside his visions as if to say, like a little laughing devil or a laughing angel on his shoulder, this is what you should have done, and this is what you are doing, and this is all the mistakes that you made along the way.
Yeah, and they showed in the first movie that they could have, under other circumstances, might have been the best of friends, but as it turns out, they had to fight to the death.
Yeah, exactly.
He even said, let me show you the ways of the desert. Like, oh yeah, that's one possible route, but that is not the route that ultimately got taken.
Yeah.
But another thing, when it comes to Chani, there are also little teases throughout the trailer, like this shot, where without suggesting or discussing what might be in those satchels, maybe it's water, maybe it's something else, but there are scenes where they're together, and that doesn't look like a flashback to me because Paul's hair's a little shorter. I think some of the scenes where he's still got like the mop are going to be like in the interim between the movies, but obviously toward the end of the movie, he's got the shaved head. But there are some scenes where he and Chani seem to be on the same page. And let's just say in the book, their interests and their goals are in total alignment in terms of what he wants for her and what she wants for him. What she really wants is to give Paul an heir, and he wants his heir to come from her. And he even tells Princess Arula at one point, if you were to go off and create a bastard, I would have you garroted or garroted. Like I would have you strangled to death. Like the only person in control of who's going to be my heir is me. And I want it to be from Chani. But I do worry also, like Zendaya right now, obviously is at the peak of her fame and stardom. She had Euphoria season 3 this year. She had the drama. She's got Spider-Man Brand New Day. She's got the Odyssey. And she has this. There's a good chance when she's an old lady, she's going to look back on 2026 as the peak of her career. It's like, wow, I had a really good year. So as a working actress, massive star. But at the same time, I think her abilities as an actress are more narrow than, say, like Charlotte Rampling or some of these other actresses that are in here, or Léa Seydoux or whomever. And I worry that if you make massive changes to the text and she doesn't completely 100% stick the landing, they're inviting a lot of online abuse to changes, because if you're gonna make major changes to the story, well, then you need a brilliant fucking actor to kind of lure people over. Like, this was a good idea to make all these changes.
I think she's got, I'm a fan of hers. I thought she was good in the drama, even if I didn't love the drama. I generally liked, she's great in Challengers. I thought she had a lot of different gears in Challengers. Euphoria, I thought she was very good at it. I didn't watch the whole series. So I'm a fan of Zendaya. I think she's got a lot to work with. And I mean, Sean Young was a great Chani, but this is a completely different ball game, like what she gets to do with the character. And the fact that Villeneuve is buffing up a series of books that had really a lot of strong female characters. But you could say that they were written in such a way that reflects the time the books took place. Like Frank Herbert, I don't know, I guess you could describe as a feminist, but the women defaulted to a lot of traditional science fiction femme roles, even if they were really
you can make
well
a case
fleshed out.
Lady Jessica is the most compellingly written character in the first book. And so I always resent it when actors talk about, whether it's the Odyssey or Dune or whatever, when they basically say like the author was wrong, they were short-sighted, they were limited in their understanding, and we know better, and we're going to kind of stick it to them and show how to do it properly. I'm like, well, fuck you. Like you wouldn't have this job if not for the fact that they created the story in the first place. And once again, Lady Jessica, beautifully written in the original novel, and Chani has a more already in the book has a more beefed up character as written in the novel. It's just not an adversarial relationship. And so I just worry there's a potential for her to come across as unlikable or just as an outright bitch when people should love the character and be on her side and rooting for her, because once again, she and Paul, their interests, in the end, they have the same goal to put their progeny on the throne for future generations. So I'll say, without having seen the movie, I have no idea if you're going to nail it or not. That's my biggest area of doubt or concern, what they might do with the character in the subsequent story.
Yeah, looking at like Reddit and things like that, which, I don't know, do at your own risk. That's just in terms of like what the temperature is of people think, what do the fans think. I think that's a really big concern right now, just because people, feel very possessive of the book. I mean, Villeneuve has proven over the first.
How many people have actually read it? The first book sold millions. I don't know how many people have actually read Dune Messiah, apart from a handful of like the diehard nerds. I feel like with each subsequent book, the audience got smaller and smaller. I would have to look up actual like sales data.
Yeah,
but it wouldn't surprise me at all if the first book has sold 10 times as many copies as the second book.
Right, but I mean, 10 times is an order of an order of magnitude larger. It's like, it still presupposes a lot of people read Messiah and Children and then God Emperor. Yeah, you know what? It may have slimmed out because let me see. I think I read half of Heretics, and I read half of Chapter House, but none of Heretics. That was the thing.
There are a lot of great like Dune devoted channels on YouTube that do lore videos where they summarize the various books. I imagine there's probably an even bigger audience on YouTube that has listened to epic breakdowns of the lore and the synopsis than have actually read the book. So I imagine there are a lot of people out there who are very familiar with the plot as written, but haven't actually done the deep dive. But I think it's totally worth it. And I will say this, my second time through, I found it much more engaging and interesting because I wasn't battling with my expectations. What I really wanted with Dune Messiah when I first read it was more Paul being awesome. And over the course of the book, he does do some cool stuff, but you're never going to be able to recreate those emotions from the first story. It's just a very different story entirely. And so I was constantly kind of battling my own expectations that I was kind of foisting upon it. Second time through, I was like, this book's really fucking cool. Yeah, but I don't know if it's the story that the legions of fans of the movie are craving and kind of clamoring for.
Well, then this is a great point, because I think we sort of came up with this when this was announced that it was going to happen. It might have been you, might have been somebody else. I'm pretty sure it was a conversation we had either online or in real life. You said that the book, you termed it as being, and it's having read it back, it fucking moves. It's a slim book. It's quick.
It's half the size of the first book. You can rip right through it.
And only that, you described it best as saying it's palace intrigue, for lack of a better term. That's kind of the narrative motion. It's a lot of skullduggery. It's a lot of rat fucking. It's a lot of traps and things that are put in plain air, and a lot of almost like
it's Hamlet. People plotting and scheming and backstabbing and conspiracies and so on and so forth. And you have to embrace the fact that it's not going to be Paul surfing on worms to like kick-ass guitar music and that sort of thing. Like the first story is much more a spectacle. It's an epic spectacle. And this, you could easily do it as a play on the stage and leave out nothing.
True, because I mean, there's no locations off-world so far as I know, and most of it takes place inside drawing rooms. There's a few different locations, but it's all inside the city of Arrakeen, with only a few exceptions. Now, the thing is, what this allows us to do, if we started to speculate a little bit, and we're having read the books, is that this. Again, it's another James Hancockian proverb about adapting books, is that the slimmer the book, the better chance you have of making a decent movie out of it, because of what you get to augment on a framework.
And you're cutting less away. I mean, even with two movies for the first book, it's like a sculptor just carving off giant pieces of stone. Like, I don't have room for all this stone, and you're leaving a lot on the cutting room floor.
Now, on the other hand, the sort of slim through line, the spine of Dune Messiah is an armature upon which you can sort of glop clay. You can glop this idea of adding more breadth to it. And that's why I think that there's going to be wholesale invention for sure. But I think there's going to be enough that's transported from children into this too. Knowing full well that Denis not going to make children, I think that Children of Dune is going to have elements transposed into this, whether it is wholesale or if it's
maybe like a cool epilogue. They could do like a little epilogue at the end of the movie where they give you like a tease of things to come. Like, you couldn't do all of it, but I hope that they will they'll find a creative way to tip their hat to Children and God Emperor of Dune, because obviously the Atreides line continues, and I don't know if there's a director alive who could do Children of Dune and God Emperor of Dune. Maybe someone like Robert Eggers, like someone who's really imaginative, but those would be tough adaptations. But obviously, Children of Dune, they attempted it with the TV show. I mean, we got a little taste. If you want to get Children of Dune, like half of season 2 of Dune is Children of Dune.
Yeah. Are we in the spoiler part now? Have we sort of
not yet, because we're gonna do a pee break first. So any final words in the spoiler-free section about what you're excited by or anticipating, or just trying to get people interested, or just make the case? If somebody out there has read Dune, loved the movies, but has never gone further, let's strike a mighty blow on behalf of increasing adult literacy, because we're in an era where for the first time in 100 years, adult literacy is on the wane. It's on the decline. I'm like, well, I can't stop or stem that flood or turn the tide, but we can do our own part to encourage people. Every once in a while, it's a good idea to open up the world's most powerful screening room. I love movies, I love video games, I love all this stuff, but when you're in the hands of a great author and it's just you and their voice and your imagination, it's an experience that's so intense and so personal, and nobody's reading of Dune Messiah will ever be the same because we bring our own baggage to it, but it's an incredibly rewarding, powerful experience. So make the pitch. Why should people read Dune Messiah before taking Dune Part 3 for a spin this December?
Well, I think that Dune Messiah, first of all, like you said, it has all the pieces of Dune in it that you need to know are coming as prologue, but it's also a slimmer book. Like I said, it moves quicker. It has clearly defined characters, not that Dune doesn't, but the world, you don't need to rebuild the world of Dune to get into Dune Messiah. Dune Messiah does a lot of good job, and it's really about the idea that this paradox, the problem that Paul Atreides is up in front of him, is the idea that he saw what was coming, and now it's all happening to him, and it's his worst nightmare. He wakes up every single day. And so it's interior, and that much like the first book, you're listening to what Paul is saying himself as he struggles watching this terror that is unleashed on the world. But it's like the character Paul Atreides is so compelling, seeing him come from childhood to this adulthood, where he's just sort of grew up without a father, has this gigantic trauma, and now this reward for having survived through it is that he's murdering megadeth amount of people through the universe. And they're trying to stop him. That's the thing. And ultimately, the conspiracy is, you may not like what they're doing, but all they're trying to do is like take Godhead away from him and sort of stop this for their own means, of course, because they want to reestablish an imperium.
Let me add to that. There's a great passage, not a spoiler, it's just Paul discussing exactly what you're describing, but it's page 44 from my copy, where he says, Chani, beloved, he whispered, do you know what I'd spend to end the jihad, to separate myself from the damnable Godhead that Quizzerat forces onto me? She trembled. You have but to command it, she said. Oh no, even if I died now, my name would still lead them. When I think of the Atreides name tied to this religious butchery, she says, but you're the emperor. He says, I'm a figurehead. Like, even he knows there are forces in motion which he cannot stop. He cannot stop. It's like he's in this horrible trap. I've got precisely what I wish for. I won this horrible war to become emperor. And now I've got it. What the hell do I do with it? As the universe becomes an increasingly dark place. And at one point, even as a premonition, he knows, as horrible as things have been so far,
it's going to get worse.
The darkest chapter is yet to come. So it's like, oh my God. So he's got this horrible burden. So I just hope the movie won't be too, I hope it won't hit you over the head with a sledgehammer saying, Paul is bad, Chani is good, let's root against Paul as he gets what's coming to him. I think that will ruin the fucking story, and it'll divide the fan base, and we'll get the most nauseating discourse surrounding it. What I'm craving or hoping for is the complexity of the novel, a nuanced complexity where you're discussing incredibly important political themes. But if the movie starts to come across as didactic or like a lecture or anything like that, I think that will spell disaster. And once again, I just know that Denis Villeneuve is making changes, but he's also got Brian K. Vaughan helping write this thing. And you and I both read a ton of comics by Brian K. Vaughan. Yep. He's a phenomenal
That's interesting.
writer.
Yeah.
He's an incredible writer, and he was not part of the previous two movies. I hope Brian K. Vaughan also understands the heavy burden and not to fuck it up.
Yeah, Brian K. But we didn't. He's in my notes. We didn't bring that up because Brian K. Vaughan. Yeah, I was kind of wondering where this guy's been because his comics are so formative to the early 2000s experience. It's like
Why the Last Man and Ex Machina and all kinds of good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, he did Runaways and all these things, but his motion picture and TV work is so strange. And then I honestly don't. He was in the Lost Writers Room for a while, and he just kind of got subsumed by that whole thing. But he's like, simply put, one of the best artist of his generation. Saga has been going on for a while. I don't read it anymore, but and I was really happy to see his name here, and I'm curious because out is John Spates, out is Eric Roth, the guys who co-wrote the first two movies separately. In comes Brian Vaughan. The thread is that Villeneuve also writes everything he comes up with. So I'm curious if Brian K. Vaughan did if he did the structure, if he sort of put together the spec script, and if then Denis Villeneuve was going to get credit for the final pass. So I don't know how much they shared on responsibility.
And as you and I both know from Saga, he is more than capable of embracing the weirdness of sci-fi. Like his imagination knows no bounds. And I won't say that I love everything he's done equally, but he's definitely one of the best talents from the world of comics of the last quarter century. So that has me very excited about what the movie might contain.
And he's been on the bench. So let's get him out. Let's warm him up and let's get him ready to hit the balls here, man.
Yeah, man. All right. So I'm desperate to have a slash, as they say in the UK. So I'm going to press, I'm going to play my little intermission video and we'll be back in 2 minutes. Oh, sorry. That's not it. That's just my background. Where's my video? Here it is. P-time. I love recording with Rob Cotto because anytime I play that song, I can always see him grooving to it in between. He's like, "Where'd that come from?" Like, you got to know more video games, man. It comes from Shadowrun, Super Nintendo. But yeah, back in the day, Nintendo and Super Nintendo, there are a lot of groovy tunes. Some
32-bit action right there, or 16-bit. I can't remember which one it was.
16-bit. And then finally, decades later, I ended up running a second edition Shadowrun campaign with Dan Pullen, Bruce Mattson, Victor Rodriguez, Martin Kessler, and Adam Ratkoff, where for a year we explored that world. But I first discovered Shadowrun in the early, mid-90s. But now all the gloves are off. Spoiler section. If you've read the book or you don't mind spoilers, then you're welcome to continue with us. But we're just going to talk about what we're excited about or what we're worried about and all the above when it comes to this movie, or just things that we love from the book. So, Bill, you pick first topic.
My first topic, I'm going to. I Hate is such a great character. And like you mentioned, he's a Gola. Let's just clear that up in case anybody doesn't know. It's introduced early. It's okay to know this because the puzzle is trying to figure out what the deal is.
We're in the spoiler section. You can say whatever the hell you like.
So Duncan Idaho had his head blasted. It's like he was hit with a Harkonnen shell, and that his top of his skull was flipped off, and his brains were splattered all over the inside the Arakeen Palace. And it is. In the book, it said that there were they bought his body. The face dancers bought the body because they knew it was some value from the Harkonnens, who didn't think it was anything. They liquidated the corpses, and they sort of knew there was a corpse there that had some value. So the thing is, they have these. What they use is this technology called axolotl. Is that what it's called? Axolotl cloning tubes. And again, Frank Herbert was writing this stuff, like Asimov. He was sort of inventing, or at least speculating on a class of science that didn't exactly exist yet, but coming up with a fantastic way to use it. So, I mean, cloning was known as a thing, but not necessarily how to do cloning. So he came up with this fantastic idea that these guys are the masters of flesh, as we keep saying, and that essentially they took the raw material of Duncan Idaho, rebuilt his body, and were able to. I can't remember if they just essentially closed it or made an entirely new. I think they made an entirely new version of it. So a Gola, Ghola.
No, because the description from your namesake Bijaz, where he talks about seeing Idaho's body being dunked, put into that vat, and how his body was fighting and resisting coming back. So that's one. Now that we're in the spoiler section, one of the scenes I'm most looking forward to is the clarification session between Bijaz and Hate, as he explains to him where he comes from and what he's intended for, and then kind of wipes it from his memory. It's like, whoa, this is, and once again, they are two they're like they're brothers, and they're in terms of how they were brought into being. That's another scene that could potentially be phenomenal.
Yeah, that's a good question. Are we going to see Bijaz? It's like, I think it's a pretty important part in the thing. It's like he sort of needs to be there, and we know the actor.
I'm sure Peter Dinklage will say you're not allowed to include this part unless you cast me in it.
There's an A-list actor out there who's ready to play Bijaz, and it's Peter Dinklage, as he's described. He's a dwarf in the book too, so it makes a big deal. Yeah, so it's gross. It's like to think about. There's body horror about how he's been returned, and it's described pretty gruesomely in the book. And the thing is, he has not really a whole lot of awareness about himself because he's Hate. He's not Duncan Idaho. But again, we'll get to the fact that
he tells Paul a million times, I'm not Duncan Idaho, but no Gola has ever remembered who they are. They're aware of who they were, but they don't remember who they were. Yeah. But Paul, as we learn deep into the book, in one of his many visions, he knows there will come a point where Duncan rediscovers himself, which is like the most thrilling, awesome, badass moment. You're like, maybe I'm getting chills even remember, like, maybe this is all going to turn out to be okay now that Paul and Duncan have been reunited, like for real, and they're back on the same team.
Yeah, I mean that I think the weirdness and the enigmatic nature of them playing at the beginning of the movie is going to pay off, I think, in a great scene. I mean, look at the other thing I look forward to too is the sort of. It's not really the climax of the book, but it's the climax of what happens to Paul's body. You see it intimated, like the stone burner is going to change. The movie's going to pivot on the stone burner part.
We've already seen a taste of it in the trailer. I mean, here it is. That's the last time Paul has eyes. And as Chani worries, perhaps the radiation went deeper than just his eyes because they were able to kind of preserve some of the flesh around it. But just losing his eyes is not enough. But also, according to Fremen custom, if you are blind, they make you walk out into the desert and die because you're no longer useful. But of course, Paul, with all of his additional abilities, he can see through other people's eyes. He's in a weird way, almost sees better without his eyes, which is just absolutely terrifying to people. And he starts like making signs of evil. But yeah, the stone burner is such a powerful weapon and has potential to like basically crack Arrakis wide open and like release its molten core. And it's very much frowned upon to use these weapons, but it is used on Paul and his allies in this crucial scene.
Yeah, that's the atomics that were used in the first movie to
atomics.
They were used to lay down the shield wall. Launch the atomics.
Yeah, you gotta say it like Patrick Stewart. Atomics.
Cavalliard.
Oh, so good.
He's so good. But and the stone burner is essentially an atomic bomb. That's what it is. It's the stone burner is the euphemism of what they call it in the future. It's great. And it has this. I love Frank Herbert again coming up with things for cloning and all the science that's theoretical, and the fact that you have like Holtzman engines and no rooms and all this weird technology that's his alone. The idea that the stone burner has a new form of radiation called K beams. It's not gamma, it's not X-rays, it's K beams. And what it almost specifically does is it attacks. It's almost like a targeted idea that the thing eats eyeballs. I mean, he gets blasted.
It melts your soft, fleshy bits. And of course, Paul, gentleman that he is, like, well, the Atreides is going to buy new eyes for everybody who got affected by it, which is incredibly expensive. But obviously, he's the emperor of the known universe. He can afford it. But this poster is a great tease where he's got his eyes in the posters. I think most people won't know what's going to happen. but it's like they're gaping open holes in the book, but the scar tissue implies what is to come. And I hope they'll just lean all the way into Paul getting increasingly mysterious and dangerous and kind of horrifying once he has to really rely upon his gifts just to function, which leads to like one of the coolest bits where after the birth of his heirs, he's able to see through the eyes of Leto II. It's such a great little bonding moment where he's like, oh, I can't see, but the baby can see it. It's so fucking cool. That's another scene. There are just so many great scenes that I'm like, please get it right. Please nail it. Like, please make it perfect.
It's too good to not do. I guarantee you that Villeneuve cannot make this. He cannot resist doing that. I think he's going to have the fact that he drives a knife through Seital's neck from across the room. A blind man's going to be able to throw a knife he's going to triangulate by the infant son's vision, who's also preborn too, I believe, much like Alia was. It's like, I think Leto and Ghanima.
Yeah, people say, oh, they can't be that aware when they're a baby. And Ali just says, I was. Like, she's the first to tell you, oh, by the way, these kids are probably already full-grown adults just in baby form.
Yeah, he talks. Paul talks to Leto in the crib, like he actually acknowledges, "Father, I'm here." Like, so they do have this sort of transference in their heads as he's seeing out of his son's eyes to slay Seital at the pinnacle of the movie. The question is, though,
earlier in the story that Seital is hell on wheels and capable of killing people very silently and very efficiently, because one of the people that he kills early on is played by one of Marcus Penn's favorite actors.
Oh yeah.
It's the character of Farrak, however you pronounce his name, and the actor's name I always mispronounce, but like
Isaac Tabankali.
That's it. But he's one of the co-conspirators who pines or yearns for a day of Fremen purity, where, like, you know, as we see in this book, like a lot of the Fremen have even started resulting, like going back to like blood sacrifices and that sort of thing. But a lot of Fremen resent the fact that their culture is changing and fundamentally being lost and destroyed as a result of everybody going off in this horrible jihad and coming back incredibly wealthy. And it's completely eradicated their civilization. He yearns for the old ways. So he teams up with Scytale, however you want to say it. And at a certain point, Scytale just goes like silent as a ninja, like something like Fade Routher would do, just executes him then and there. So I hope they'll also nail that scene and just show how dangerous Robert Pattinson's character can truly be.
Yeah, I think that you're going to see Robert Pattinson, I think, become more characters than he was in the book. The nice thing about the book is that you almost ride along with Seital, so you're inside of his head. You're next to him as he's doing these things. It's never a secret who he is. But the nice thing about a film is that you get to use his skull fucking and his rat fucking to full advantage. So you're not going to know which character in the room could possibly be him along the way.
Totally.
Not only that, but go back to the David Lynch one for a second. David Lynch had it so that the Baron's doctor, who's sticking the needle in the pustules, played by Leonardo Cimino,
he's like, I love your skin.
Put the pick and pea, turn it around real neat, make love to your skin, your lesions. Yeah, and so that was Seital. In the book, in the movie, it would have been that doctor was Seital essentially
in disguise.
In disguise. Yeah, and that's. But I love that. It was such a good idea. It would have made so much sense. It would have been a perfect retcon. And that's how you would have got a hold of the body so easily. So if you need to explain how they poached the corpse of Jason Momoa's character out there, that would have been awesome. But yeah, I was going to say, my question to you is, does the movie end where the book ends? Because that is, I want to say, anticlimactic. It sets up children, but it's not really the ending of a massive 3-parter if you just sort of have him walk out into the desert.
It's not the ending, but I think it's an ending. And if you have the children born, and then Paul, once again, because obviously one of the themes of the movie is the fact that he used the Fremen to achieve his goals and Chani feels betrayed. But if at the end of the movie he embraces Fremen values by walking off into the desert because he's now blind, that will give us a sense of an emotional resolution or a payoff. And obviously he has a brief appearance in Children of Dune where he bumps into Leto II and he's a little bitter and a little cynical, but he's still alive and well. And Leto's not entirely sure that it's Paul, but it's obviously Paul. But I think the arrival of the twins and an epilogue where Paul wanders off, and then we basically see how Princess Irulan has decided, well, as much as I was like, an evil psychotic bitch plotting against Chani the entire story, feeding her contraceptives so that she could not give birth. I'm now going to dedicate all my life and knowledge and wisdom to raising these children and helping guiding them on a new path and that sort of thing. I think it'll give us enough of an emotional resolution that it'll serve as a placeholder, and then probably no one's ever going to come. I mean, if anybody ever tries to tackle these books again, I imagine they'll probably just start over from the beginning because the first book is so obviously teed up to be a great movie. But if somebody wanted to pass they wanted to pass the baton to somebody to do Children of Dune, there's such a short list of filmmakers who either have the track record or the success or the talent or imagination even to do it. I have a feeling Villeneuve's going to try to put a bow on it and then let it sail off. But whether or not Warner Brothers will allow it to remain a piece remains to be seen. We've already seen this fucking idiotic show, Dune Prophecy, that they've made, which is, for me, unwatchable. I mean, it sucks. Not only sucks, it sucks balls. Clearly, Warner Brothers is going to continue to try to monetize this world. Why be so mean? It's more Dune content. I'm like, if I want more Dune content, I will read the books. I will watch lore videos. Like, lore videos are Dune content. I want to see great adaptations of Frank Herbert, or you can fuck right off.
I wasn't a big fan. I kind of didn't understand the point of it, of the Dune Prophecy.
Money.
Yeah,
you got to monetize that IP.
I'm not sure, but no one talked to. I don't think anybody liked it. It was filled with A-listers. It had good performances. I mean, there's a lot of British actors. It was shot somewhere in England. It had every single BBC actor or TV4 actor. You don't know who they are, but generally it was a solid cast. Emily Watson and Mark Strong were the two guys you actually had seen before. But it just kind of turned in circles. I just felt like I didn't know anything more about Dune by the time it was finished. It also didn't feel like Dune.
Also, it takes place thousands of years before Dune. How come it feels so similar to Dune? It's like, maybe let this world change and grow and evolve, because even between Dune and Dune Messiah, the world changes, the universe, the setting changes incredibly. And so this is not a stagnant, like kind of stale universe that's locked in amber. It's constantly evolving and changing. As they say, the period in between these first two books, it's so complex and so fascinating. It creates more historians than any other period in human history. It's not a like a snapshot of an era that never changes. And so, and in a weird way, I almost kind of, part of me wishes it could remain the same for a little longer, because I just love the setting as it begins so much. But yeah, the world must evolve and change or it will die.
Yeah, I'm curious how this movie is going to do compared to the first two. I mean, again, I think Villeneuve is trusted with the keys to a giant apparatus. And, he's going on to James Bond after this. So the guy's fully in the game. It's like, I don't know if he's going to do
the IP game.
Yeah, the IP game. Well, but his stuff, it comes across with a lot of credibility when he does it. I don't know if he's doing one for you and one for me anymore. It seems like he's just in the game now.
I think now he's just like, let's make giant franchises and put a few of my fingerprints on them when I can. And I do think, like, the idea that he's giving us these scenes as opposed to just describing them when people like talk about, what it was like to see the sea for the first time. I do think it's probably the best decision he made was to open it up and try to turn it into a giant epic, showing what would it be like for Fremen to encounter the sea for the first time, as opposed to just somebody in a room describing these experiences. So I think this is where he really has an opportunity to really thrive and show us something on the screen that we've never seen before. So I think it's going to be much more sumptuous and much more of a spectacle than the book.
Yeah, this scene has you see in the foreground there, that is
Stilgar.
Yeah, that's Stilgar himself.
Let me go back to it.
So it's sort of covered by our stupid faces there, but
I can get rid of this. Booyakasha, there's Stilgar, out of focus.
Javier Bardem, yeah.
With this shot, I could either have the background in focus or him in focus. Like, it looks cooler if the Fremen are in focus. But yeah, obviously you want to talk about a mind fuck. Fremen conquering a planet and encountering the ocean for the first time. Yeah, it's going to scramble their brains.
Well, that's a story that Farak tells about. Like in that scene where the conspirators, he's like talking about the fact that he was on the front line of the jihad. And his whole thing is that he feels like he actually did the thing where they were driving knives into people's chests and cutting throats out. And he felt like, I got burned by this. Almost like a Vietnam veteran thinking, all we did is like just stack up bodies, which there is going to be scenes of them essentially burning bodies like by the thousands on these huge fires
of bodies.
Yeah. Which is something the Sardaukar were doing in the first movies, and it's like it's the Fremen who were doing this, turn into the exterminating army.
You become that which you fought. I mean, this is a classic shot. Here's Alia. I think it's Alia. I believe it's Alia in her white robes, walking amongst a field of crucified enemies. That's dark. Yeah. Or maybe it's non-believers, or maybe it's people like, because the book opens up with this great interrogation sequence where somebody's talking about like who Paul really is. And you can tell there's already like legions upon legions of like a new religious class that worships everything Paul says or does as a god. And she's obviously the high priestess. But yeah, if you see a field of crucified people, yeah, the Atreides, what they're turning into is something that even their mother cannot be a part of, because as they reference in the book, Lady Jessica, so horrified by her two children, she refuses to live on the same planet that they live on. And that's another thing that has me worried about the trailer, the first trailer that came out, when Lady Jessica is basically like telling Paul, like, oh, well, your father never started a war. I'm like, well, you know what? You're not even supposed to be in the story. You write a letter to Alia in the book and your reference, but it's yet another scene that for me fills me with dread and uncertainty. It's just yet another scene where one of the female characters shows up and tells Paul what a dumbass he is. If they have too many of those, it's not the story. Like Paul makes many mistakes, and he is a tyrannical despot who's responsible for many billions of people, but he's still the hero of the fucking story and wants to try to avert the horrors to come. And I just hope the book doesn't lose sight of that.
I just can't believe that you might put us back on the screen now. I'm starting to get scared that I haven't seen my image in 3 minutes now. There we go, much better. I have so much faith in Villeneuve that he's not going to go down that route. There's so many directors and studio heads and marketers and script treatments and all these things where all these things wind up going awry, and we are right to fear the fact that they would meddle so much with what makes stories work well.
Well, we've had 10 years of shows and movies fucking it up, so we're conditioned to expect the worst as opposed to hope for the best.
Exactly. And yet I would say that this Warner Brothers collective, for whatever reason, they've managed to keep him kind of Villeneuve it's in sort of a rarefied air. They're giving him the best experience at Warner's you could possibly have. And I don't know how many other directors are getting this idea where there's a lot of trust in what he does. And it wasn't at all certain that he would have sailed the first Dune through. I mean, that came out in the middle of the pandemic, made a shitload of money as soon as the theaters opened up. And it was an unlikely blockbuster, but it definitely prospered from the fact that it had Chalamet and Zendaya in it. I mean, everybody, it was star-studded.
Yeah. I recently rewatched both of them. I was amazed at how much the second one has aged really well in the interim. I was like, you know what? This is holding up just fine. It's aging nicely. Yep. And I think the fandom is ready and craving like more of what they saw. Yeah, Dune Part 2, I prefer it to Dune Part 1, which initially when I first saw it, I was like, once again, you're always wrestling with what you hope it'll be or what it might be versus what it finally is. But now that I know what it is, in spite of my grievances about the handling of Alia, I love Dune Part 2 and think that there's more good than bad in that movie.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything that stands up to it. I mean, again, I feel like I'm still favoring the 84, Lynch 84 is still stuck in my head as the sort of Dune experience on film. It's not, far from a perfect film. It sort of has been with me my entire life. However, it's like in our epoch and our cursed, blighted age, have you seen anything that can sort of compete with this? You had a good run with
in
the
the
Marvel
2020s. Yeah, with 2020s.
Not the 2020s.
Big budget spectacle. It is the franchise.
Yeah.
I don't think any other franchise comes close in the 2020s. There are interesting original films out there from the 2020s and like interesting horror films with people like Damian McCarthy. But if you're talking about big budget IP, in this decade, the Dune franchise is the one you have to wrestle with.
I think it's second to none for me. I mean, look, a lot of stuff has come out. And I mean, I really liked Superman last year more than most. And yet I wouldn't say that Superman was equal to, as much as that was a Warner's product, that wasn't equal to this. And I think James Gunn got enough rope to hang himself as much as he could have possibly wanted to. And I think he sailed it through. I think he did an okay job. But it's not equal to this. Again, it just
not
seems
remotely. The fact, like imagine if Denis Villeneuve instead had decided to make Leto in the first movie played by Oscar Isaac, some power mad despot who's like murdering and strangling women and trying who sought out to conquer the Fremen. That is basically what James Gunn did to Jor-El in Superman. Like, fuck you. That's not the story. We've got nearly 100 years of Superman stories. Jor-El did not send Superman to Earth to conquer it and spread his seed.
It's a tough one to get past. I will give you that.
I will never get past it, especially after having Marlon Brando pronouncing Krypton as Krypton and his loving relationship with his son. I think Denis Villeneuve nailed Leto in the first movie. I think you could make a case that Oscar Isaac was the best part of that first movie. And these are key components. You got to get them right.
Yeah, because it's like Leto the Just, Duke Leto the Just is described as being this, fallible, mortal, but sort of loving, warm character. And, like talking about all the different fathers that Paul Atreides had. And the reality is that I think that if you're basing it off of like the English families and the sort of old nobility of Europe that Frank Herbert was lifting this stuff from, it was often the case that the children of nobles never even saw their parents except for maybe the occasional meal. They were raised by coterie of handlers, governesses, nannies, and things like that. It's like, well, what worked for this and that Frank Herbert's distinctly American sensibility is that this is almost like an American family, people who stick together. They pass their values on to the kids with all that sort of filigree of European
minus the bullfighting,
dynamics.
which the grandfather's into.
Right. I mean, I think wasn't there some? It's referenced that he died of being gored by a bull. They do mention. Oh, there's also a back hit of a bull.
He still enjoyed recreational bullfighting, and like Paul's like this is like grandfather used to fight bulls for sport.
Yeah,
what a maniac.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I mean, even in what is it? I can't remember which book it was. If it was Dune or Dune Messiah or Children, where they mention that the Atreides family is descended from the ancient Greeks, the House of Atreus. Totally. It's like there's a lot of connections in all sorts of from antiquity to modernity and all these things. Yeah, but Villeneuve is in a class of his own when it comes to this because there simply isn't another filmmaker. And again, I could quibble with the fact that his vision is so granite, flat, and gray and austere, absolutely stunning and huge, and it staggers the intellect, it staggers the imagination, the kind of worlds he can come up with.
But it's not a party. When you watch the first 1984 film, it's like going to a rock concert, and you're like, dude, style. Give me all the style that you can give me. There's so much style, so much raw entertainment value that I don't think Denis Villeneuve I don't think he has it in his DNA to deliver that raw entertainment value. He's got the intellectual approach, but he doesn't have like the emotional component that David Lynch totally leaned into.
Yeah, and the thing is that's why Lynch doing a movie like that, 84, is so unusual and either can never happen again or will ever happen again. I mean, it's like maybe Dune itself ensured that it would never happen again in 84 just because it was such a write down for the studio and sort of again, why is it a colossal flop? Why is it a joke? I don't fucking know. I love it. But the point is that in Dune 84, every world had its own palette. And that's the way it would have been if Jodorowsky had done it too. Each world was so distinct from one another.
Jodorowsky's Dune right here.
There it is, Jodorowsky's Dune. The only problem is that this movie, every single world is just populated by flat, gray, marble, and granite.
But I did like the portrayal of Gidi Prime in Dune Part 2. When you get that, essentially an extended intermission introducing Fade Routha and all the gladiatorial combat, I'm like, I can hang in this world a little longer. I really like those scenes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking about Caladan and Arrakis and Arrakeen really don't look too different. The Sietch, the desert, the Sietch is the same thing. It's flat, planed rock that they're living inside of, which is exactly what Arrakeen looks like, which is exactly what Caladan looked like. And I could see that that's his purview. It's like, I'm sure if Villeneuve built a house, it would be all a postmodern masterpiece filled with granite countertops and granite backsplashes and granite toilets.
It would have as much personality as a museum, but it would feel like Denis Villeneuve.
Right. It would look like a modern museum, feel like Denis Villeneuve. And it's like, the one thing I can think of now in terms of how weird it gets, I think, was maybe in Sicario, where the house is completely stuffed with the corpses of all those people at the cartel.
Sheridan. Yeah. I think Taylor Sheridan injected a lot of personality and visceral detail that perhaps Denis Villeneuve might not have included if not for the fact that you have Taylor Sheridan writing the script.
Yeah, exactly. And what is it? They put the shot center mass and Emily Blunt's they to put her down essentially. They shoot her in the bulletproof vest, and the guy says, "Just calm down, let it happen. Just let it happen." It is like shooting someone with a bullet to stop her from going through the tunnel the rest of them were going through. There's just irregularities that show up in his work that it's like, oh, this didn't come from his mind, but he really successfully gets when you feed him, when you interpolate someone else's idea of what weirdness is along the way. The dinner scene where where Benicio del Toro is sort of killing the guy's family one by one in front of him, and he finally gets to the end of Sicario. It's like that's another scene. It's like I could picture him doing that, but I could also picture that being informed by a writer who lives in that world of like, what does absolute cruelty look like? What is that form of like base disgust human behavior to another human being? I hope there's some of that. I hope that we can, maybe that's Brian K. Vaughan will be able to sneak that in a little bit past
the details
sort of
matter.
chill.
All right. Well, let me, I'm going to show a few images to you, and I want you to conjecture or hypothesize what we might be seeing, because I'm not entirely sure what it is. I have my theories, but this scene, one of the subplots. Well, you tell us what is one of the major subplots that is part of the story that has the Fremen and Stilgar in particular outraged?
Well, okay. Okay, we'll put it out there. So they steal a worm. That's the whole point, is that they're looking to bring a worm off world. And it works. The idea being that if there's a stranglehold on the spice melange, and it's based on the fact that the Space and Guild moves it off of Arrakis, and Arrakis is the only place it exists because the worm's created as a byproduct of their metabolism. What if you could replace a worm to another world and restart the spice cycle all over again? You'd break the stranglehold. It's like, again, finding oil outside of Saudi Arabia 200 years ago or something like that. And yes, it actually, until you said that, this looks like it's definitely Seital instead of a Thopter escaping in a sandstorm. Like he's having something to do with that, I'm guessing, as they hoist a worm off world. Also, the Bene Tleilaxu are supposed to be, like, they've been working on cloning a worm for centuries, apparently, but they haven't been able to. They can't quite get it right. So the big
debate is whether or not Chani is helping or fighting them, because there's no scene with the worm that you see in the book, but in the trailer, big action set piece, Chani is there. And so some people have hypothesized perhaps she's a co-conspirator and she's trying to take power away from Paul, or perhaps she's trying to preserve Fremen culture and keep the worm there, but we really don't know. But clearly, our boy Robert Pattinson, I think he's like on the verge of being attacked by or swallowed by a worm in the scene, and just sign me up. I'm looking forward to it. That's
what I look like on Sunday mornings when I'm getting up. Believe me, after a bottle of Ardbeg, that's what I look like. Yeah, so that's a big step, though. I mean, even including the worm thing in the book, it sets up what's to come in novels. The next few novels, but it doesn't necessarily pay off inside the book. It's more like a thread, another bit of intrigue in a story that could have plenty of intrigue enough alone as it is, Yeah,
it's one of many subplots that's running throughout the novel, making it spicy art. So here's another shot where I really have no idea what I'm looking at, but I want your theory.
Yeah, that is a scene. I think that there's actually some dialogue with the scene. Again, that could be any overdub that we're noticing. But the point is that this appears to be a scene where Duncan Idaho is being interrogated by Paul Atreides, essentially saying, "I am the trap." It's like, I'm here to kill you. Yeah, I'm here to kill you. Let's say it's like you hinted at it before. Duncan Idaho has been resurrected, but he is a Zensuni Mentat. So he's a philosopher of the sort of there's two holy religious texts. One's the Orange Catholic Bible, which is a descendant of our Bible. And the other one's something close to the Quran. It's the study of Zen. It's Zen and Sunni Islam, essentially. So he's a Zen Sunni Mentat. So he's a human thinking computer. He has his sword master's influence of being able to, have amazing combat that trained Paul and everything he knows. And he's also this sort of like, hey, man, he understands theology and the sort of holy text of the age. So the thing is, Paul is constantly asking him. He's supposed to be there. He was dropped there to serve as his mentat. He was given to them as a gift by Seital.
Yeah.
The idea of the question
is, a mentat can only function based on the available data. So it's like the more data you give them, the more effective they will be.
Yeah. And Paul asks him, what are you doing here? And he says, well, look, a mentat would tell you that I am a threat to you. I'm here to kill you. That's his own distillation. It's not a threat. It's sort of just him identifying as a mentat what is most likely to be the case. And that's a fucking great scene in the book and then he doesn't throw him away. It's too attractive to have his mentor there the entire time. So at no point does Paul Atreides ever make him go away. He's always confident that Duncan Idaho would never raise a knife against
So what do you think these little globules are in that red tank?
That's fascinating. Well, you know what? I think it's one globule, and you're sort of seeing the image refracted because it's a corner glass. But my guess is is that look like spice gas? Perhaps, maybe it's yeah. It's hard to say exactly what it is. Again, there could be some Photoshop trickery or some special effects tomfoolery to obscure what's in there. But my guess is spice gas. Maybe it might even be like
I might
a
be suffering
hologram
from some spice gas at the Thai dinner I had last night.
I know. What do you
While we're
think
on
it
this,
is? What
well,
do you
I
think it is?
really, I'm like, is this like, are those like organs or what the hell is it? I'm just totally bewildered. For me, it's the most mysterious shot from the trailer. Where I really have no idea, but I would have to go back and reread the scene. All right, but what about this moment where hate is dropped out of the sky down onto a battlefield? What the hell is going on here? Because it's definitely an invention for the movie.
Yeah, that's a good question. Is it training of the Gola after his resurrection? Is it? I mean, it looks like it's on Arrakis.
Or like kind of taking him for a
Arrakis
test
pad.
drive to see if he's still got all of his abilities.
Yeah. Maybe they're dropping, but I mean, it looks like Arrakis at least. So it's on the planet. It could be the Talaxu test driving him. It could be Paul sending him out on the planet to do some dirty work. I mean,
Or
so far as I know,
like a Fremen uprising that's trying to preserve their culture, and he's got to suppress like a violent uprising or something like that.
yeah. I mean, the shot of him that we have in the corner of the screen here obviously is part of the same sequence where he's rest up. He's ready to go. But
it's like him versus like 100 people. It looks like.
Yeah, and they're not using shields, which should make the kills a little easier than they were in the first Dune, where you sort of had to do the mathematics of slow blade penetrates the shield. I think we're kind of like past that.
Although
they don't really know how to render.
Fucked that up. Villeneuve in the first movie, they had this giant
only
scene where Gurney and Paul are introducing the concept of the shield, but about 2/3 of the way through the movie, like, oh, let's kind of forget about the slow blade penetrates the shield because we see over and over and over again people with shields just getting stabbed outright. I'm like, well, you're not following your own internal logic. Set up whatever rules you want for your fictional setting, but every great fantasy or science fiction movie has an internal logic. And if you break it, well, then the verisimilitude and the reality of this world starts to crumble and fall apart.
Generally, yes. I mean, again, that's the worst sin he created. Okay. I mean, it's a sci-fi movie. Have it as you will. But yeah, this is interesting. Obviously, we could speculate all day on what this is, but it's really going to have nothing to do with.
Is this part of the same scene, do you think? Because here, clearly, Paul's already got his scars. His eyes have already been melted. In the trailer, it's almost trying to set it up to make it look like perhaps Paul and Duncan are fighting. I don't think they are. But in the trailer, it's like, I think there are a lot of pump fakes in the trailer designed to confuse and mislead us and create conjecture. But Paul never actually goes on into a battlefield ever in the book. So what do you think is going down in this scene?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it could be a vision of maybe he thinks that what would it look like if he actually was there to kill him, and what would the killing look like? And perhaps it's out on the sand during something. Maybe it's a phantom vision of the death that he assumes could come from Duncan, but is like maybe he thinks his prescience is giving him a false reading, or he's seeing one of the potential futures. It's possible. Also, by the way, I think that since we're looking at the trailer stuff, I have a feeling, I mean, if we haven't already agreed, his eyes aren't going to be there in the finished movie. These are, as they shot on set, I have a feeling that these eyes in post are going to be removed. He's going to have empty sockets. So
I hope so. Yeah. I want him to look freaky as shit, because while he looks, I mean, we're all used to Timothée Chalamet being this beautiful, handsome little boy, blah, 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 who's now 30 years old. So he's no longer a little boy, but he looks very, very young. But I hope they'll let him appear rugged. Like, we've seen him be Bob Dylan. We've seen him be Willy Wonka. We've seen him do all these roles where he gets to be the elf child and so on and so forth. I'm ready for Timothée Chalamet to grow up a little bit, get a little bit more rugged. Like, I remember like Brad Pitt and Leo in their early parts of their careers, like, these fucking pretty boys, I can't fucking stand them. I wanted nothing to do with those guys early on, but at a certain point they turned the page, like Brad Pitt when he did Snatch, or Leonardo DiCaprio when he did The Departed. It's like, oh, okay, they're becoming men now. I'm a little bit more rugged and more mature. I hope Timothée Chalamet is also turning that page and becoming a little bit more rugged.
Yeah, I think I thought it would have been between the two Dune movies, between Dune and Part 2. I thought if he had bulked up, if he got swole and he sort of put on some mass, it really would have conveyed the fact that the character had grown in between the two movies. He didn't do that. I mean, he's a slender guy.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's in shape, but it's like he's not going to get jacked. I mean,
he's in like rock climbing shape. He's like lean and wiry, but it'd be tough to imagine him packing. I imagine he'll be skinny his entire life, the same way Leonardo DiCaprio has always been a little bit soft in the center. He's always had that gut that never quite goes away.
When you see Tom Holland as Spider-Man, I think Tom Holland wears more muscle mass for Spider-Man. He does.
Totally. He's like a legit
get more
gymnast.
jacked.
Yeah,
he's got.
At least early on, like 10 years ago when he first started playing Spidey, there were shots of him like on the set where he could like jump off trampolines and do like sideways spinning somersaults. Like he had some legitimate gymnastic skills, which obviously helped inform the character. Yeah, I think Tom Holland he's probably got 30 or 40 pounds on Timothée Chalamet.
Yeah, but he's probably not much taller than him. I think that they are short dudes, short kings, and it's like Chalamet just has the thing. He can't put on muscle mass because it'll get out of the lane of the type of guy he's in. If he is playing the Bob Dylans, these sort of like Marty Supreme kind of guys, he can't get jacked because that'll sort of ruin his image. All of a sudden, you look like Chris Pratt or Kumail Nanjiani, right? Those guys don't look right with a gigantic muscle rack. You need some sort of human softness on you if you're going to keep playing the middle of the road roles.
But actors love roles where they either get to lose weight or gain weight. It would be interesting if for one movie, Timothée Chalamet was like, you know what? I'm going to start doing steroids and I'm going to power lift for a year. And I'm just going to be like a little like bowling ball of muscle for my next movie. It would be an interesting challenge for him, but obviously he's one of the most desired men on planet Earth in terms of, I mean, he fucks billionaires. Like how many guys do you know of that are out there having sex with billionaires? Whatever he's doing, it's working out to his advantage. And
he's figured it out. We have not exactly.
Like earlier, we were talking about how Zendaya is having like the year of all years, when it's like most actresses would probably be willing to murder their parents to have a year like Zendaya is having this year in terms of just the raw quantity of opportunities. But I find it interesting how Timothée Chalamet, he really seems to like to do one movie a year. He likes to do one franchise movie, and then he likes to do one character-driven drama, then a franchise movie. But he's not overexposing himself. But every year, whether he's making Marty Supreme or a Dune movie or a Complete Unknown or something like that, but he seems to be balancing, I'm going to do one auteur-driven, character-driven film and one big franchise. And whoever his manager is, I think, is giving him some excellent advice. Like he's in big movies, but he's not becoming Seth Rogen where he's appearing in fucking everything. If I hear Seth Rogen's voice, I'm like, I will not watch any of this show or movie because I've heard your voice too many times. Timothée Chalamet, I think he's not too hot, he's not too cold. He's just right in terms of his exposure.
He picks the right roles. Yeah, it's true. He's got good people around him. I mean, that was all the best of them have good decisions. I mean, one of the things we talk about is about how what was DiCaprio's suggestion was it no franchise, no superheroes, no hard drugs,
no hard drugs. And there's one other piece of advice, and I can't.
Right.
That's excellent advice. No superheroes, no hard drugs. And he was 10 years early on that. Everybody now is like, I don't want to make a fucking DC movie. It'll ruin my career. And the same thing here, like Timothée Chalamet very wisely dodged the superhero bullet.
Yeah, and you could look back at DiCaprio's career. We have enough distance to go back to say the one misintended film that DiCaprio made was Blood Diamond in terms of like getting away from his own reservation about where he wants to live. And he picked it up.
Terrible.
Yeah, he picked it up because he slid right into Marty movies after that. It's like that was a one movie jag of something a departure he didn't really continue with. Again, he decided, let me get back on track and be really disciplined about what I pick, not just how I act and who I date, but what I pick. And so again, he's mostly just stuck with at least triples or home runs for the most part. I mean, in terms of success, I like them better, some better than others. But yeah, Chalamet generally, it's like bones and all. Even Wonka, he made watchable. It wasn't a great movie, but he was compelling in Wonka.
You can tell he wants that Oscar, obviously, and he probably overplayed his hand after Marty Supreme, but he also wants longevity. And also, he doesn't want to get burned out. If you're making one cool movie a year, you're going to have a long, cool career that's going to last potentially for decades. And I think, he's just, of the young male actors out there, and he's no longer in his 20s, he's officially 30, but of the young male actors, like say under 40, if you look at his box office, whether he's in Marty or A Complete Unknown or Dune, he always generates box office. He doesn't have the big catastrophic failure yet. And who knows, maybe the big catastrophic failure is right around the corner. But everybody's got a bomb or it's like, wow, why did you agree to do that? And he's has avoided that landmine. I'm sorry?
It's like he's entitled to that. I would grant him that. In fact, it would almost be, I don't want him to have misfortune, but it's like if he did one Nicolas Cage style, like Sorcerer's Apprentice or some piece of shit that we don't want to see him do. I don't know. Like Nicolas Cage got into a habit where he was buying ziggurats in New Orleans and Tyrannosaurus Rex skeletons and islands and stuff like that. It's
his
like
lifestyle's expensive. He got to the point where he would do any movie if you could meet his asking price. He's like, I don't care what it is. If you meet my price, I'll show up on the set.
Yeah, I'll go to Bulgaria and I'll shoot Drive Angry with you in Sofia, the capital, or something like that. Yeah, it's like I don't see him making these mistakes. It's really difficult to keep up this. I mean, it's at least a decade now. What was his first breakout movie? I guess it was that Beautiful Boy. Call Me by Your Name? Oh, Call Me. It was a breakout. He was in that Steve Carell movie before that we played the drug addict.
Yeah, I mean, he was in like Interstellar and stuff like that, where famously and Matthew McConaughey, he was taking dumps in his toilet in his trailer and things like that, and they were kind of hazing him. But I feel like Call Me by Your Name was when people like every girl I knew was like, who's that pretty?
Yeah.
Elf-like boy, who's that Twinkie boy that kind of looks like a girl, but we still like him anyway. Like he just exploded onto the scene after that movie, and after that, it's been nonstop work ever since.
Yeah, again, it's like he's got a good record. There aren't a lot of them, much the same ways that Villeneuve is in a class of his own in terms of like just putting together solid movies that establish a great career. And Villeneuve, I think, is in his late 50s now. He's like pushing 60. Generally doesn't have any weak spots. I don't love all of his movies, but nothing has not worked, I think, in terms of that. And Chalamet has just really sidled with good creators. He's picking good directors to work with, so he doesn't embarrass himself.
While I might have some reservations about some of the creative decisions for this movie, I would love to be proven wrong. I have far more reservations about what is the Denis Villeneuve aesthetic or temperament going to be like in the world of James Bond. Because over the last couple of years, I read for the first time the first couple of novels in Ian Fleming's series, and I've obviously seen the movies a billion times over, especially the Sean Connery and Roger Moore movies. I don't know if there's ever been a more unconventional fit where you have an incredibly successful director at the top of their peak, like the peak of their powers in game, coming on board James Bond. I'm like, ooh, so much could go wrong. But who knows? Maybe it'll be a bold new direction. But yeah, I'm long on Chalamet. I don't know if I'm long on Villeneuve's James Bond.
I think that, all right, my faith in Villeneuve is such that he has done everything he's wanted to do the way he asked to do it. He's been given so much money from every studio. He's turned around hits. He's worked with A-listers. He's given people great performances to put in their resume. And he switched around between a bunch of genres. His style is always kind of the same to some degree, but it's a really competent style that remains cool and adaptable. What I hope for is that he certainly understands the fact that adapting Ian Fleming gives him the chance to do something he hasn't had before. There's no reason for him to pay off to play the same motifs and the same loops that he's gotten into with his films so far. I think Ian Fleming could be a license to kill, a license to do more than he's been able to do so far with his own movies. In that he's done Aliens, he's done Cartels, he's done Doppelgangers, he's done
so much sci-fi. Between Arrival and Blade Runner and these Dune films, I think his career has been so dominated by sci-fi. It's almost hard to imagine him operating outside the sci-fi genre. So yeah, we'll just have to wait and see.
Uncendies, which is a globe-hopping all over Africa type thing and set in a mythical nation, I think that was his big first breakout film he did, was it 99? That was incredible. And it's like, if you want a template for what a Bond movie could look like, if he's zipping around between deserts dealing with like guys in Jeeps with machine guns and insurgents, and like it's a sort of very gritty take on James Bond, where James Bond is doing spy work in the field. He could have that, and no one's seen that movie. That's the thing, because it's really not in English; it's in French and Arabic. But it's like it's a really good sign of what it could possibly be, because he's at the beginning of his career, he's changed a lot as a director. But at least
my biggest fear with the Bond flicks is not necessarily Denis Villeneuve. My biggest fear is what input will he get from Amazon in terms of what kind of film or show they want. Because wasn't that long ago where Barbara Broccoli was like, all of your ideas are terrible. You're a bunch of fucking idiots. And famously, Jeff Bezos said, whatever it takes, pay her off, make Barbara Broccoli go away. And they had to pay her $1 billion because every idea she was getting from Amazon was wretched. Like, oh, we need a Moneypenny prequel spinoff show, and we need this and we need that. She's like, oh, this is dreadful. This is awful. I have a feeling that, after seeing shows like Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, and things like that, my belief in Amazon as a corporate entity is weak or fragile when it comes to some of their impulses. Although they are investing in things like Project Hail Mary, so it remains to be seen. But I just feel like there's so much that can go wrong with Bond. They'll have to make me a believer, but we'll have that conversation deeper down the road.
Yeah.
But getting back to this book, as I was reading Dune Messiah, I guess a couple weeks ago or a couple months ago, what blew my mind as I was reading it, and it hadn't occurred to me because I had not read these books at the time when I first read it, R. Scott Baker's Prince of Nothing series, aka his second Apocalypse series. I recently reread that as well. It's my favorite dark adult fantasy series of the 21st century, even more so than George R. R. Martin's books. I was blown away, though, while reading Dune Messiah, how much of the creative DNA from here has been borrowed and kind of built upon and put into here, where like we've got the Atreides here and we have the Anasarimbours in this, but very similar in vibe and tone to like Alia and Paul. We also have all the philosophical implications about like oppressions. Like if you look into the future, by doing so, do you change it? And so I feel like those philosophical impulses were also heavily inspired by Dune, and also even the idea of the face dancers with Scatali or Skytail or however you want to pronounce his name. There are evil creatures that are almost identical to the face dancers in R. Scott Baker's work. So for anybody out there who's looking for more Dune or more Dune Messiah without rereading Dune Messiah, if you love dark adult fantasy with a tad of sci-fi, R. Scott Baker's 7 books, it's an unfinished series, but there is at least an ending, a placeholder at the end of the 7th. I'm going to give that my highest possible recommendation, but it didn't even occur to me until I was reading Dune Messiah just how much R. Scott Baker owes a debt of gratitude to Frank Herbert, who's just a colossal imagination connoisseur, to borrow a phrase from Robert Meyer Burnett.
Oh yes, that's a good way to put it too, and a good guy to take it from as well. Yeah, I haven't read the Bakker. R. Scott Bakker, I guess.
I called him Bakker for years, but I learned to my dismay about a year ago that I've been mispronouncing it for years. So yeah, it's R. Scott Baker. So I apologize, Mr. Baker. I called you Bakker for a long time.
Yeah, Frank Herbert. The weird thing is that more people, I think, it's funny because if you look online, between Reddit and between different meta products, like there is a gigantic clutch of people who are just absolutely mortified that Herbert's son, Brian and Kevin Anderson continue to put out. They're a factory of they
money grabs. Like, we're just gonna run my dad's reputation into the ground for the rest of our lives with one shitty book after another.
Talk about
write your own fucking series.
Talk about being influential. Like you have, again, the 6 books are still on. I think the last one was published in 1983, or I forget when the last one came out, when Chapter House came out. Or maybe I think Heretics was the last one. Heretics came out last. And it's like, the fact that they've been at this because the publisher, his son, has just said, it's like, oh, my dad has extensive notes. And so Kevin Anderson was a sci-fi writer, a sort of like, pulp fiction guy who'd been doing, I think he did a lot of Star Wars books along the way. So he knew about serialized fiction. And they just said, we could ride this all the way to the fucking bank, man. We could just keep synthesizing Dune. And they've done books about
it. With movie studios, run it right into the ground. Just squeeze every last drop of life or dollars out of it that you possibly can.
The book publisher, I don't know who's got, is it Bantam? I don't know who's got the book rights now. They've got to know exactly what it means, like what people are saying about it, and how withering all the criticism is of these 2 guys, where people just dunk on them all day. They make fun of Brian Herbert and Kevin Anderson as being like, grave robbers, and yet they continue to put out stacks and stacks of books every year. Apparently the money is worth more than the bad rap is getting for Dune as a brand. Because
I can't remember which YouTuber it was, but somebody said, before Dune comes out, I'm going to read every Dune book, not in the order in which they were written, but it chronologically in the setting, I was like, don't do that. You have to read like 20 Brian Herbert books. Like you'll never make it. You'll never get to Dune if you try to read them in sequential order as opposed to the order in which they were published. But yeah, I don't know how far they got. I didn't ever revisit their channel to see if they just threw up their hands in despair, but I imagine they're like, this sucks.
I don't know. Was there any other images that you had, or did we run through?
I don't know if I have any more images, but when going back to Brian Herbert, I think the best thing you can possibly do is to do what Joe Hill did. And most people don't know who Joe Hill is, or if they do, like they might not necessarily know that he's Stephen King's son. And he also likes writing horror and fantasy and working in a lot of genres. And some of his books have tied into his father's lore and that shared connectivity. And some of them are standalone. But if you want to be a novelist and you have a very famous parent who wrote some very popular books,
go write novels.
Go off in your own direction, your own path. And Joe Hill has a career that is thriving and healthy, that's totally independent from his father. And obviously it helps if you're Stephen King's son. You're like, hey, Dad, what do you think of this idea? I'm like, oh, I think your idea sucks. Maybe try this instead. But I feel like Joe Hill, that's what Brian Herbert should have done. If you want to be a novelist, but don't just like rape the dead body of your father for a couple of decades in a row. I find it grotesque.
It's like Dr. Mindbender pillaging DNA to create Serpentor, just essentially plundering all these graves.
Exactly. It's precisely what we see with studios doing over and over and over again. Like, how come you keep doing this to Star Wars? How come you keep doing this to J.R.R. Tolkien? How come you keep doing this to Marvel? Like, money. Yeah, we're chasing the mighty dollar at the expense of taste or artistic integrity or soul or like reason to live or like artistic purpose or anything, any positive attribute you could care to mention. They are chasing the mighty dollar, but it's also short-sighted because it eventually you bleed dry the thing that you're trying to exploit. Whereas with a little bit of long-term planning, you can keep these things going for decades. You and I grew up in the 1980s when Marvel Comics was like 25 years deep into their continuity, and they kept it going for a few more decades beyond it. But if you keep the right writers around and the right artists around, you can keep something going for a long time until inevitably you just try to start squeezing it, whether it's the comics or the movies or whatever, and you start getting piss poor results.
Yeah. The heat death of your idea, the heat death of your creativity or IP. It's certainly happens.
Very few IP can survive the death of the original creator. It wouldn't surprise me if in 20, 25 years we're still seeing Warner Brothers making awful Game of Thrones shows and like, we got one more. Like this time it's gonna be good. I promise. It's like George R. Martin's been dead for years and at some point he will die. He's like 75 years old, but they will continue to make shows and movies long past his death, not based on his books. And they're going to be even more dreadful than the shitty adaptations of the books that we have. Like I'm no fan of season 3 of House of the Dragon, and I've stopped covering the show because it's just it's already fan fiction, and they've got a good book to work with. It's like, well, if you're already making fan fiction when you have good material to work with, how bad are things going to be when you run out of material to work with? And we shall see what we shall see. There is no bottom. There's always a new depth to be explored when it comes to terrible adaptations.
We need a bathysphere to get lower and lower until we're in the Challenger Deep, and there's only just chemotrophic bacteria to call friends down there.
But the good news is there's a very good chance that Dune Part 3 might fucking kick ass. It might rule. There's a very good chance it's going to be the best movie of the year. I think it's a very good chance it'll be better than The Odyssey. I'm nearly positive it'll be better than Spider-Man Brand New Day. And I think it's a very good chance it'll be better than Avengers Doomsday. Yeah, I think of all the big budget spectacles coming out this year, there's a very good chance that Dune Part 3 could easily reign supreme over 2026.
Yeah, I'm confident it's good. Well, it is the only one I'm looking forward to of all those. I have tickets for Odyssey next week. Of the rest of them, I honestly don't give a fuck what Spider-Man does, and I don't give a fuck what Doomsday does. I guess we still have the head-to-head day, right? We're still talking about on the same day they're releasing Doomsday and Dune 3. Like that is supposed to be the deal.
I think so, yeah, which is idiotic. But if you're a fantasy and like sci-fi nerd, of course I'm going to see both. But I think for casuals, they'll make a choice. What are we going to see this weekend? And who knows?
Yeah,
but I think the reality is but Dune Part 3 is going to have the IMAX screens, so the premium format fans are going to obviously go with Dune. And I think when it comes to quality, if you're worried about your movie Doomsday coming across like leftovers that have been reheated, if it compares unfavorably to Dune Part 3, and Dune Part 3 is some sci-fi masterpiece, yeah, it could make Doomsday seem kind of childish and juvenile in comparison.
Right now, as we speak, the Russos are somewhere in Burbank or Glendale. What they're doing is they're going inside, they're cutting and pasting actors from this scene into this scene and reassembling over and over again. And they'll export a draft and they'll send it out and they'll say, maybe we just take this actor, cut and paste over here. And that they've been making the entire movie doing this, essentially synthesizing dialogue on the fly, creating it just based on fever polls from moment to moment. Like about
and executive input and notes. And like,
executive input. It's like, we need to put Gamora in that scene. Get rid of Black Panther and put this other guy in. Oh, and move them up to Titan again and make a reference to Thor's hammer. No, wait, let's go do it again. Yeah. Rewrite it over.
They're
again.
Doing what traditionally was done with the typewriter and paper. They are writing, but they are writing with cameras and computers and special effects, which are considerably more expensive. It's like, write the story with pencil and paper or ink and paper, which is very inexpensive in comparison, then shoot it. But that's not the approach they chose. Like, no. Let's just start shooting it and we will plus it as we go. I hate that expression. Marvel could talk about plussing movies. I'm like, oh, you mean desperately in a panic mode trying to fix this like abomination? That's what you mean by plussing.
This is Favreau did this when they shot Iron Man. It was a mistake. It was an accident. It was a fucking coincidence, and yet it worked. So the thing is, he created a movie on the fly. They were skating on thin ice. They managed to sail it through. They accidentally created a franchise, and the method of building a franchise through strange, irregular chemistry that should not have succeeded, and it did. And essentially, they pushed the limit as far as they could possibly get, with way more success than they ever could. And, I have no doubt, maybe I'm giving Villeneuve and Warner Brothers credit, but I just feel like he's got to be this formalist traditionalist where he makes movies in such a way as he grew up watching them. He, of all the guys, Nolan loves films, Villeneuve loves films. But you can tell, not just they love films, but when he's in the Criterion closet, the stuff he picks really speaks to the taste of a cineast, the taste of a historian, the taste of someone who just actually enjoys the experience.
And they like the great epics of the past. They're both making epics, but like Nolan loves 2001 and Villeneuve loves Lawrence of Arabia, but like they love the really good, ambitious epics that have incredible soaring, just like artistic vision on the part of the filmmaker. And that's what they're aspiring to recreate. Yeah. And you and I are both mutual fans of Chinatown, but I'll never forget when reading The Big Goodbye about the making of it.
Oh, yeah.
How Polanski tells Robert Towne, he's like, look, we have to have the screenplay more or less locked and finished and perfect before we start shooting, because when I'm shooting, I'm so busy and I'm so scatterbrained and I'm just trying so hard to just get through the shoot. I can't pause to think about whether or not the story is working. Let's fix the story now while we can focus on it, and then I can just shoot it. And it makes so much sense. You have so much that's outside of your control, and it's so exhausting and so debilitating and so physically demanding while you're shooting. The last thing you should have to worry about is the screenplay. Fix the screenplay, then shoot the movie. I'm sure it's easier said than done, but that's something that Polanski knew when he made Chinatown. And it works. The movie, the execution, they wrote a great script and they went out and they just filmed the fucker.
Yeah, and I mean, it says a lot that, again, it took us 45 minutes or so to mention Brian K. Vaughan's name, the fact that he's been brought in to do the third one of these. And it's like, if you get the chance to bring in big guns, or at least people that, his name is on this because it's supposed to make us have this feeling. It's supposed to have our eyebrows arch a little bit, like, oh, Brian K. Vaughan. Yeah. Oh, well, that's a guy who's got, he's got a lot of different, weapons in his army knife.
He's got chops and he's got a body of work.
Right. He's also but his tone and his sensibility. Also, that he loves Dune. The guy loves comic books. The guy loves genre fiction. The guy, again, it's like you're getting someone with real taste. It's not like, take nothing away from the Russos. I don't know if they were born filmmakers. I know they make movies.
Take all you like away from them, because I endured The Electric State. I endured The Gray Man. I even read the novel. I was so foolishly naive to think that The Gray Man might be a good movie. I read the book upon which it was based beforehand. The Russos have done a lot to utterly obliterate their reputation in recent years. And The fucking Citadel, one of the lamest shows in human history. Yeah. So the Russos have a lot to prove with Doomsday.
Yeah, I mean, or not. I mean, honestly, I don't give a fuck. They could literally do whatever the fuck they want. These characters at this point are so off the reservation. They're cut and paste. I'm not going to.
I will say this for the Russos, though. I met them briefly in 2014 when they were just getting started with Marvel. I was at the Holly Shorts Festival in LA where Bill Plimpton was speaking, And the Russos were there because they also got started making shorts. There's a little cocktail party for filmmakers ahead of time. They just released Winter Soldier, and they were very approachable. I just walked up and said, guys, I just want to say congratulations. The Winter Soldier fucking ruled. I love it. And they just could not have been more gracious and friendly and outgoing. Very, very nice guys. I just didn't like the Electric State. I don't wish them ill. I just hate their recent shows and movies.
That's good enough. They've lost touch with whatever their thing was that gave them a swerve. I think they've gotten so far away from it. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's start winding things down. And once again, we might revisit this topic when we get the third and final kind of like trailer sometime around like November or so. But any final thoughts about this movie, or any final bits of plugging and promoting you want to do for your own body of work and output?
Nothing plugging and promoting, but I got to say, I'm really, like I said, looking forward to this film, not just because I'm a Dune freak, but part of it is that idea that looking at some of the fan questions, whether it was on Reddit or it was on Twitter or I forget, a few different places, where people were saying, it's like, what if it doesn't accord to the book? What if they change these characters? What if they do these things? And it's like, man, change all they want. It's like, if you use a book, as you're adapting it, it's a fucking adaptation. I was going to say adaptation. It's not a word. Adaptation.
Some people do say adaptation these days. I'm like, that's not the word. The word is
adaptation. Word. That's not it.
But people are trying to make adaptation a thing. It's not the word.
But you have, the book exists.
Fetch is not, stop trying to make fetch a thing, as they say in Mean Girls.
Fetch is not a word. But you have the ability to, this book will last the whole test of time. It's there for you to read. It's pristine. A word hasn't been changed in it. So far as I know, they're not going to boulderize the book like they've done with Ian Fleming stuff. The thing is, it's like the beauty.
They tried with Ian Fleming. I've got the original copy, so they can go fuck themselves.
That's the point. But what we have is this gift, this pleasure we're living in, is the ability to watch a real artist synthesize what this book is. I want them to change things. I want you to make this a different. You don't have to adapt this 100%. In fact, I'm welcoming strange adaptation. I'm welcoming staying outside the lines. I'm welcoming, what does this inspire you to do? And I just feel like that is the spark of what you get when you give great material that can be made in such a different way. It's like, this guy has the ability to show us something we haven't seen before, as he's done already with the two prior installments of this. And it's like, I have all the faith that he's going to put a bow on it, make a trilogy. He knows exactly where it's going. It's one set of eyes. It's a shitload of work. I'm surprised he hasn't had a nervous breakdown from doing it. But it's like, I want there to be changes. I can even do with substantial changes. Again, because
what about a kitty cat that has to be milked to keep you alive?
See how that, could you have predicted that would have come up? In 1983, that Dune was incoming in 84, that we were going to still be talking about it to this age. Such is the brilliance of an unhinged creator. That's how amazing the fucking shit is.
Well, I could not think of a better way to draw this episode to a close. Where can people find you online if they want to talk more about milking cats or heart plugs or whatever the case might be?
Put the pick in, Pete. Turn it around real neat. I am at William Scurry on Twitter, at billscurry.bsky. whatever it is. I'm on, Instagram, all the usual bullshit. And my own podcast is I Don't Get It, at Noah and Bill Show, all over the place. It's on YouTube. If you want to watch the episodes, the people putting podcasts on YouTube to listen to, as you know, it's a phenomenon now. So apparently we're doing that as well. If you want to use that as your listening device, but I'm easy to find. I'm all over the place.
Fantastic. Well, we hope y'all have enjoyed this episode, and stay tuned for more nerdy conversations about Dune in the months to come. But I said at the beginning of the year, 2026 is turning into a fascinating year when it comes to adaptations on the big screen. Project Hail Mary, Odysseus obviously is a big one. We've got A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, as well as A House of the Dragon Season 3. We have Dune, but like, if you're a fan of science fiction and fantasy books, either being clumsily or perfectly adapted for the screen, it's just a very exciting year for discussing adaptations and the pros and cons and the strengths and weaknesses. And I hope the trend will continue because, as I mentioned before, literacy rates are on the wane, and books will never be what they were in the 1800s and early 1900s. But I do think books continue to have a role, and there's an emotional intensity, like an intoxicating immersion in style and voice that you only get with a book, that you can't get with any other art form. So this is the two of us doing our part to encourage people to read Dune Messiah and form your own conclusions about whether or not Villeneuve is ultimately successful or unsuccessful in his adaptation, not adaption. But you can find me on Twitter at Colbrax. If you like this video, remember to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, become a member, all the good stuff. But more importantly, as always,
Ain't like it used to be, but it'll do.
You know how to whistle, don't you, Steve? You just put your lips together and blow.